All right, guys, we are live Friday afternoon watch talk for the European crew pre-show for the Archieluxury live stream. We're going to be talking watches this afternoon or this evening for our European friends, and looking forward to some good watch talk, some good watch chat. We're going to have some guests, I think, appearing, our European friends, in a little bit. So, hopefully you guys enjoy the show, and wait for a few of them to show up. But yeah, no, honestly, we were just chilling this afternoon and thought we'd do a bit of watch talk before the main show this evening. For the North Americans, there was a what we call the morning show, which is generally for the Australian evening, a couple hours over this morning. So we were enjoying that, and yeah, I thought I'd just pop on, see if there's anybody who wanted to talk some watches this afternoon. I was bored, didn't have much to do this afternoon, so I thought I'd pop on and talk some watches. We have P. Lucas in the chat, prime time bonus. Yes, sir, prime time this afternoon. We'll let some more people log in to see the stream because I just put it live. But yeah, looking forward to talking some watches this afternoon. And feel free to engage in the chat. Hey, Mr. Zoso, how you doing? Hopefully you're enjoying your Friday afternoon, potentially at work. And spoke to ABC. I think ABC is going to log on in a few minutes here with us. So yeah, no, we're going to talk some watches. Any topics you guys want to go through? Haven't really kind of put a topic together. Just thought, I mean, there's a lot that was going on in the Archieverse over the last little bit. Yeah, so I figured. But hey, look, like, it might be something for you to listen to for the folks that are working. Something for you guys to listen to this afternoon. Some watch talk. Reza, how you doing? We are Tanzilin this afternoon. Absolutely. We're going to talk some watches. Probably talk a bit of drama. Who knows, right? We're going to have a bit of fun this afternoon and just, yeah, honestly, just enjoy the Friday. It's going to be a big show tonight. And, obviously coming off a big show last night. Sona, how you doing? Welcome. I think Bear overvalued the Daytona for trading. Yeah, you know what? Like, the Daytona's a watch that's obviously skyrocketed over the pandemic and whatnot. And traditionally the Daytona's always been trading over retail, similar to the Nautilus. But obviously in today's market, we're in some crazy times. A lot of watches are coming down. The Daytona, one of them. My dealers also actually kind of refuses to trade in Daytonas just because of the volatility. So, yeah, it's definitely a controversial watch. It's a watch that I'll probably talk about today. It's a watch that I'm considering to buy this year, but I'm on the fence. So if anybody wants to convince me otherwise, definitely do that. The hype is over. Look, I really hope it is. I'm from an era of before the hype. I enjoyed watches. I enjoyed being able to pick up Rolex pieces at pretty decent prices. Yeah, look, craziness is definitely, I think, it's limited a lot of collectors. It's limited a lot of people from being able to really enjoy a lot of the pieces. And we can talk about standard like steel sports like GMTs, Submariners, all that jazz, right? So definitely hope it's coming down. We are seeing some of it. Cermets have come down, Pepsis have come down. So yeah, definitely. Definitely something that I think is something we're going to talk about. I'm going to roll an intro because I'm one of the guys who just doesn't. I don't really dig some of the intros that are run either on Archie's channel by him or by other folks. So I'm going to run the classic intro for everybody to start the show. So here we go. Classic intro. Let's get this party started. All right, we are back after the intro. Arguably, what I believe is one of the better intros around. We have ABC joining on behalf of the Euro crew. Welcome, ABC. I don't know if you can hear me, ABC, or I can't hear you, but welcome to
Can
the.
you hear me?
Yes, sir. You are
Well,
live.
hey,
We are
welcome,
live.
Salam.
How's it going?
Hey, yeah,
We
great to be
got,
on. How's it going?
yeah, it's going good. It's going good. I had a bit of a lazy afternoon, so I thought, hey, you know, I know how to use a GMT properly. Archie doesn't. He'll call me at like 4 in the morning, but I did my calculations, and I think it's around close to 6:30 your time in the UK,
Yep,
um,
that's right.
and I would assume 7:30 on the mainland. So welcome to our Euro friends, our UK friends, our Irish friends. Upvote, upvote, upvote. Dr. AMB, thank you. We're going to be talking some watches today with our good friend ABC. So, ABC, maybe we'll start. I mean, yesterday you saw the GMT review.
Yep.
Definitely a collection that is not the norm. Obviously, not a lot of us had a lot of time to talk about it. So, why don't you give us a bit more in-depth thoughts on what you felt about his collection yesterday?
So, like I said, he he doesn't follow the crowd as much, and I mean, obviously, he's gone with some staple choices like a GMT, but he's got quite rare iterations of them, particularly that all black ceramic. That's not very common, and same with the first Kermit, the pre-ceramic Kermit. So those are like your staples. That's how I see it. And then there are a couple of other choices. Some would be like, what were you thinking getting that? But I mean, I personally think the Glasuta original is a nice watch.
Yeah,
Don't know what you think.
I agree with you. I think I'll just in typical Archie's fashion, we're going to interrupt a bit here. We got a super chat from Mr. Zoso. Thank you so much. $10 US
Thank you.
from Mr. Zoso, the legend. Tan really saved this stream from incoming doom when Bear was on vacation, and I'm grateful for him and everything that he has done. Thank you, Tan. Guys, look, it wasn't just me. It was guys like ABC, Mike the Snake, and other folks, Narc, Curly, everybody who hopped on during the holidays. We knew that Bear needed some time off. I could sense that he was getting a little burnt out and needed time with his family. So, I'm an OG streamer with Archie. I'm not afraid to hop on the streams and talk a bit of watches, talk a bit of shit. So, yeah, no, we definitely wanted to. And look, we also want to provide value to the viewers. I know it's tough for the European crowd, UK crowd, to watch some of those streams when it gets really late. So I kind of had the idea today. I said, look, we don't really have a crew that covers the European streams. So if there are people that want to, newcomers that want to join us, we're going to be dropping the link soon for any newcomer that wants to join and talk watches. But thank you again, Mr. Zoso. He writes, totally following the crowd, Rolex heavy collection. From my perspective, I mean, like ABC said, right? The Glashütte was off the beaten path. The Pam on a bracelet, definitely off the beaten path.
Yeah,
Um,
but even the Rolexes that he's gone with, they're quite rare. They're not very common from what I felt. You don't see that. Well, I don't see that many pre-ceramic Kermits. Mind you, if I go to London, I probably won't see many Rolexes at all because people actually want to hold on to them and not have them robbed off them at knife point. But there you go. Um, so that's the UK. I think it might be different in certain parts of mainland Europe. I don't know. It's definitely different in Australia. I think a lot of guys like plastic wears watches. Well, a lot of those guys wear their watches out and about. I don't think they feel threatened the way you do in parts of Britain, the main cities, especially London. I think London is where you hear about it the most. But um, in terms of some of the other pieces he's got that I didn't think were sheeple, the Breitling Navitimer, you don't see a whole load of them around,
right.
even
That's
though
right.
they're iconic watches.
That's right. Yeah, no,
And
absolutely. Look, because
What?
also saying rare, question mark. Like, I don't think the you may necessarily meant rare from a rarity perspective. I think it's more in terms of like off the beaten path. Just you're not seeing a lot of folks gravitating to the black, black, black. Everyone's all about the hype of the Pepsi and maybe less so the Batgirl and the Batman. So definitely unique. And guys, this is why I'd asked Archie to go for kind of a different rating system because if he just goes into his usual spiel of like, oh well, those watches aren't worth anything on the secondary, well, it kind of not everybody collects that way. There's a lot of viewers that don't collect that way, so that's why I asked them for balance, for uniqueness, for value retention as well. Plastic is a self-proclaimed hype freak. Look, and here's the thing though. So, and everybody in that's watching, like there's a lot of us that collect, and there's a lot of new people I think that come in here and all they do is they read online. And when you think of groupthink, it's the term that's really perpetuated a lot in the watch community. You got groupthink around in the forums, you got groupthink on YouTube, and everyone's spruiking the same thing, right? Buy a Submariner, buy a GMT, buy a Daytona, basically everything Rolex, Steel Sports, buy an Aquanaut, buy a Nautilus. Like when you kind of go past that, maybe 24 watches, um, I think that the collecting journey, that's where you kind of go off the beaten path. And I think that's, to me, ABC, like I see GMT's collection going off the beaten path. Is that something in your collection, is that a philosophy you go by, or do you kind of stick to something that's a bit more safe?
So I've decided to kind of follow, not intentionally, but follow what Patrick Philippe says, where you choose a couple of staples and then you revolve around that on the periphery, on the outside. So I've got pre-ceramic sub, pre-ceramic GMT, which I want your steer on something about that actually a bit later on. But I probably do plan to do a collection review in the same format as the way GMT did it. But let's see what Archie's backlog is with doing those. Don't know what you think.
Yeah, look, we'll get into that in a second once I address some of the comments. So Uncle Jonga says, Pepsi, the true GMT, the icon, and the original. Absolutely. I think it's almost everybody's favorite. I'm a big fan of the Coke. I had a 16710 Coke. What the irony, Uncle Jonga, is I actually went to my AD and then asked for an insert for the Pepsi as well. So I don't think I can get away from that statement as well. I think you're absolutely bang on. Whole Milk says, groupthink is preventing Jacques Dro from getting hype. Jin is a big Jacques Dro fan. And from my perspective, I think I'm trying to kind of perpetuate some of the thought around, everyone says buy what you like, but that sometimes for a new collector is difficult because they don't necessarily know what they like. And you guys see I have the Longa website up here and just kind of showing the finishing that Longa does. And not everybody understands finishing and the extent of finishing. And I think that's part of the journey is learning. So yeah, look, like I say, don't close your options to any brand because there may be a certain design that you enjoy, or you may fall in love with the way a brand really markets itself and presents its philosophy on watches of either finishing or design and whatnot. So yeah, look, like I want to break groupthink as much as possible because I think it may be ruining watch collecting. ABC, you talked about the 5 digits. So I've owned a few 5 digits, the 16710 and others, and the 16570 Explorer. I had an Explorer 2 that was black dot. I never had the Polar in the 5 digit. And look, at the start of the boom, you saw 5 digits, and say with vintage, you saw like the 4 digits, like the 1680s, really skyrocketing with everything else. And I think they've kind of cooled off a bit, and collectors, and that might be the just type of collectors hopping in right now, are wanting the most modern, the latest and greatest, and therefore the 5 digits are cooling down. Where I see a lot of value in 5 digits is, I think the case design of the 5 digits for me. I like to take my watches off the bracelet because when you have like fucking 10 bracelet watches in your collection, it gets a little boring. I like to put them on NATO straps and other straps. And I feel the 5 digits are perfect from a case design to do that. Um, what really kind of drives you and gets you excited about the 5 digits?
So that's what I was kind of brought up on in watches, because my father was in the watch trade for 40 years, and those were the main Rolexes at the time. Obviously, they weren't to the hype prices they were now. I think a sub used to be about £2,000, and they started wait lists, but all you had to do was pay £300 more, and you can get it on the grey market. But obviously, that was a long, long time ago, about 20 or so years ago. So
Absolutely.
I like the fact that they were so modular, and I've always said this, and I maintained that, because my father put um, a diver's extension on an Explorer 2 because he went traveling with it. So if he needed to, um, go into the restroom or whatever, he can let it go up his sleeve. And the fact is, because you can do that with those watches, that's the huge appeal. You can switch around with Jubilees on a Submariner. Some people say that's heresy. Okay, but it's fun and
You know, it's
it's
interesting.
versatile.
It's interesting because the chat is talking about bracelets. Like Zoso is talking about how the modern Jubilee is a great bracelet. It complements the
Yeah,
ceramic GMTs, and I feel that in the modern watches, the modern Rolexes we're talking about, like you're limited in terms of your ability to really swap them out. You got the rubber bees, you got, really. I mean, I don't really see anything but those. You're not really throwing them on NATOs. You're not really messing around, like you said, with the diving extension with it. So yeah, I mean, the
yeah.
versatility I think is the answer. ABC is the
Not
versatility
just
of those
that. I
watches.
mean, you can't put, say they bring out say you've got an all black GMT, you can't put a Pepsi bezel on that because the model name is on the papers of the watch. The BLNR is on the papers. The LN is on the actual model number of the watch, whereas it never used to be. You could swap the wigs as and when you pleased.
And did in your father's watch trade, I don't know if he was a gray dealer or what we call a used dealer. If that was what he
Mainly,
did.
pre-owned. Well, he used to repair watches, get them. He used to pick up battered watches, refurbish them, and sell them.
Yeah, so people weren't probably coming in, looking for specific, if if he had a Coke GMT and he threw it on a Pepsi insert, like you wouldn't have people, because again, you wouldn't be able to see on the papers exactly what it was, necessarily going in and saying, well, that wasn't accurate. Outside of the fact that if he Frankenstein a watch and put, something that clearly wasn't supposed to be on it, um, on the piece. So yeah, like you're absolutely right, and I think that there's a mystique with those older Rolexes, and if we can even get past the bracelets, just variations in dials, variations in script on the dial. You see the 1680 Mark One to I think Mark Five or Six Red Submariner,
Yeah,
all different. And Rolex really had a ton of variation where you see it a bit right now, but you just don't see it, I think, to the level of the extent of the 5 digits.
but there's another advantage for me with pre-ceramic, especially with the GMT. In a way, they kind of cater for half-hour time zones. Not perfectly, because there's 5 clicks between hours. If it had 10 clicks, or if it had an even number of clicks, you could get that right in the middle. But you've got um, something that kind of caters for half hour time zones. Don't have that on the new ones.
No, you don't. You're absolutely right. It also says new shoes are always fun for a change up. I enjoy try changing things up. Yeah, look, there's a lot of people who, and I'm not talking about modifying your watches like, like Doc BBW does, where he'll change the hands or something on his watch. Um, but yeah, like a bit of variety, never hurts. I mean, I'm wearing my Tudor Black Bay blue, just a regular daily wear for me on a strap, and yeah, I'm kind of getting bored of the strap, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll throw it on a NATO. And in this watch on a 39 mil is going to look just fine. It's an older, it's a shape that's more similar to an older Rolex. And for me, that, I find that a lot more fun and a lot more versatile than just, my standard modern Rolex. But But ABC, look, like everybody's about the latest and greatest these days. Everybody, wants the most modern. Some people care, like Don Haynes, I know, cares about accuracy, drives them absolutely nuts if the watch is not within spec. And I think that collecting and the topics we're going to talk about, collecting is a lot more than just how much is this watch either going to go up or am I going to have my money? I mean, it's a great plus, but I think if that's all you think about, you're really losing a lot of the fun, right? Well, what makes it fun for you, ABC? Let me ask you, what makes it really fun for you in the collecting sphere?
Well, one thing I was going to also add was that in those days, Rolexes weren't douchebag watches the way they are now. That was it. Also, when you look back at the pre-ceramic watches, it was at a time when you didn't have to be mega loaded or a flexer to have a Rolex. You could be just a regular guy doing a fairly regular job, and you could still afford these really, really good watches. I mean, I'm wearing my sub, the 16610. I'll show it when I get back home, but that's keeping to +1 a day.
That's
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 fantastic.
that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Andrew
My
Aberdeen says evening 10 and ABC. Good evening. Yeah, look,
good
like,
evening.
yeah, you're like, it's crazy how, like, I mean, when I had my red sub, the 1680, like, it was a watch that's 50 years old and just still functioning. I'm like, what do we own that's that old anymore that we can still use? It's probably going to outlast all of us, right? Like, that's the magic,
Yeah.
I think, of watches. And I'm trying to, I guess, like, and when we're on the Archie show, it's a bit hard because you get steamrolled by the super chats and you get steamrolled by some of the value retention conversations. So I think that understanding the magic, what's important to people, is really important. We got a question here from Uncle Jonga. 10 and ABC, do you like the Sky Dweller? I'll let you go at this one first, ABC.
Yeah, when I saw it on Archie, well, Archie took it off and gave it to me. It was a bit big for my wrist, but I think it's a marvelous watch. It's a beautiful, cool, sophisticated watch that's got it's got really good functionality. Having an annual calendar, that switch from kind of 29 or so 30 days to the first where it's appropriate. That is so cool. And see that on a Rolex. And when I first saw it, I didn't get it. I thought, what the hell is this trying, what are they trying to do? But when you see it for what it is and the way that you control everything at the bezel, that is very, very cool to me. If I could pull it off, I would, and I had the money, of course, I would get one.
Yeah, I can pull up a Sky Dweller here while we look at it. Look, my perspective of the annual calendar, Uncle Jonga, I don't know if you know my history, is I used to own a 5035 annual calendar, which was the original annual calendar that was created by Paddock. And look, I feel that the complication is extremely. It's probably one of the most usable complications out there. I'm gonna pull this up a little blue Sky Dweller because I know everyone loves the blue Sky Dweller.
Yeah.
I feel that the complication is probably, in my opinion, my most favorite complication. Perpetual calendar is a bit outside everyone's budget.
I'm just going to pay for something. I'll be a minute, okay?
Yeah, no problem. I can man the show. So, perpetual calendar can be a bit outside, a lot of people's budgets. But an annual calendar is I wouldn't say it's affordable, but I think it's achievable for a lot of folks. So an amazing daily use complication, probably the most usable, in my opinion, complication out there. And if you think of the way that the purpose of the complication is to be daily used, you want to watch that, you want to be able to use daily, that has, some functionality from daily use. And look, if you see a steel watch with this, classic Rolex design, like, you really can't go wrong with the Sky Dweller. You're getting probably the most functional complication in an extremely usable design and watch that, like, really is a full package. So I'm a big fan of the Sky Dweller. And it's interesting the way they do the annual complication, the way you can actually see the complication in how they've designed it, which is different than Paddock. And if I pulled up a Paddock annual calendar complication, like the Paddock 5396, which is an annual calendar, Paddock does it a little differently, where you can see the day, the month, the date. You get a moon phase on it as well. So it's definitely a day-night indicator also. Definitely a different way of seeing an annual calendar, a bit more obviously dressy. I don't know if this is something you'd want to wear every day. It's not in steel. This one's in white gold. So I think Rolex's purpose of the annual calendar on the Sky Dweller is bang on. I think that's why it's a successful piece. Obviously, blue dial and steel, like it's gonna drive everybody insane to want to get it. So long-winded answer for you, Uncle John. Will probably bring you a bit of value here on the show today. So yeah, big fans here on the annual calendar. Dodger, hello, chat 10 and ABC. Dodger, if you want to hop on, I think you can let yourself on. So you're welcome. We're trying to do some European streams for our European fans and folks out in the UK, mainland Europe, Ireland, everywhere else. So yeah, Dodger, more than welcome. Love to have you. Andrew Aberdeen, 10, what model Paddock was pictured in your BMW steering wheel? Absolutely gorgeous. My BMW steering wheel. So I've done a few of them. I believe it was my 5035.
What kind of
5035.
dial did you have, and what metal did you have the 5035 on?
Yeah, so it was exactly like this. It was a slate gray, Roman numerals. Interesting enough, this is probably because this is an Italian dial. I had an Italian dial because you can see here that it's in Italian. It's not in Spanish. So pretty much this would be the exact watch that would be in there. Archie calls this the three eyes, which is the day, the month, and then at the bottom is the day-night indicator, because you don't want to set the watch in a certain time period, or else you can potentially
Yeah.
damage the mechanism. So this was the watch. It was the 5035, which was the original first annual calendar ever made by Patek Philippe. And yeah, look, annual calendars don't really get the love out there from the I'd say the auction market or the real heavy hitter collectors out there. They kind of always see it as a lesser complication to the perpetual. And the metal was white gold on this one.
So here's a question for you. What do you think of the inline date Pateks?
So are you speaking about like the 5205
Do they
maybe?
sometimes call it American date? I'm not sure, but it's the
Are you
inline.
thinking
So you'll have
something like
like
this? You mean?
I'm driving at the moment, but I can't see.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by inline date. Here's the
So for example, Monday the 13th of January, you'll see it along the top line, MON 13 Jan, all in one
yeah
line.
yeah. I think it from a symmetry perspective, it's not. I don't like that personally. I like a bit of variation. I think that the 50. So this I pulled up, and I know you can't see the screen. I pulled up the 5205. This is a very popular watch. A lot of people like this design. They think it's a lot more modern. JJ is a big fan of this one. To
Yeah,
me, I'm more of a fan of the classic 5396, which is based off of a perpetual calendar reference where you see it says it'll have Patek Philippe. That's not really a good picture. I'll pull up a good picture here where it'll have Patek Philippe on the top. You'll have the day and the month, and then at the 6 o'clock you'll have the date. So it's a little separated. It brings a bit of variety to the dial. So I think aesthetically for me that's a bit more pleasing than just have everything in the straight line. It just seems like you're just crunching everything in just too small of an area. So
but when you
not
see
really.
what it's like in the movement, like underneath the dial, it's cool. It's
Yeah,
really cool.
I think that like if you're a movement nerd and you can appreciate that, absolutely. I think that the layouts on dials, for me at least, is more of the aesthetics of how is it pleasing to the eye.
Yeah,
For like a Watch Alex or anybody, like a Don Haynes, people that really are into movements, they can appreciate the complexity, how difficult it may be to create. But I think for the mass market, it's if it's not visually appealing to most people, it's probably not going to be very, very successful. So Whole Milk says problem with perpetual calendars is that we're skipping the leap year in 2100, what a headache we're handing to our grandchildren when we pass them a perpetual. Absolutely, there is that definite limitation on the perpetual calendar, and I think we're a little bit far away from that. But yeah, you're right. Like in many years, it's gonna be a problem. Um, he says it's been a lifetime losing out of those streak runs. Just talk about the Mets, okay? So we're not gonna get into the New York Mets. Um, but yeah, like from a aesthetic perspective of looking at perpetual calendars and annual calendars, they're absolutely beautiful. Patek Philippe makes some beautiful pieces, and so do a lot of other brands. Everyone knows I'm very much focused on Patek Philippe, but yeah, look, I've got a couple of tabs open. We can look at on Longa and Grand Seiko today. But yeah, like the annual calendar to me, ABC, like that is the usable complication. I think that's for me is like everyday use. Um, I could probably say that that's probably more usable to me than a chronograph is. I don't know if you if you time making your tea or something or steeping your tea. I don't know what are you using a chronograph for these days. To be honest, like you tell us.
Boiling eggs and before first world problems. But I'll tell you which Patek I love. It's actually the 5960 because it's the annual calendar and the chronograph with a day-night indicator. And I like it in steel on the white dial because of the contrast of the hands and the surrounds of the apertures, like the date and day and things like that. That the older you get, you don't like spotlights dazzling, your eyes. So the more contrast you have, the better it is for me.
So
That one.
I pulled up a 5960 on a bracelet, white dial. Um, yeah, like this is a beautiful piece. A little underrated, in my opinion. I think a couple of folks have in the community have picked this up and probably flipped it. So it may not, the bracelet is polarizing. A lot of folks don't like the Patek bracelets, and
Yeah.
but like you said, dial layout amazing. You got an annual calendar, chronograph. So definitely, and this isn't even considered what Paddock would call a grand complication. This is just in the complication section, and which is interesting because going back to the whole annual calendars are a little bit considered not as important compared to perpetuals. If this was a perpetual chronograph, it would be definitely a grand complication. But yeah, like this is one of my favorite watches. Absolutely, I agree with you. Um,
So
Zoso
somebody
says
said, here's a
like
few
the
tens of thousands, but you must spend it on a watch. I'd try and get that.
Yeah, and this is I think in steel, so it's usable. It's
Yeah.
something you can absolutely pick up. I think a lot of people are very familiar with what my next target is on the show, and it's the 5212. And Zoso, if you're listening, maybe you could understand this a little bit as somebody who probably works in sales. This is the weekly calendar, so a very unusual complication for Paddock to come out with. Um, NATO says, "Wow, is this a 24-hour stream channel now? Cool." No, NATO, we're just trying to cater. I had some time this afternoon. Thought we'd do a bit of a pre-show. The European folks are having their dinner, maybe having a drink. So I thought we'd bring some watch talk to the European folks that watch the Archieverse, the Archie channels. So back to the weekly calendar, an unusual complication because you see this. I think like Oris might do a weekly calendar. There's not a lot of brands that do a weekly calendar, and for some folks, knowing the week of the year is important. Like if you're Zoso, for example, I would assume someone in sales would be looking at, their forecasts for the month and what week are they in, and kind of tracking their forecast for that week. There are like Paddock talks about certain jobs would this would be relevant to know the week of the month, and even the week of the year for business. So it's a complication that can definitely be used. It's just unusual. Like I don't know, ABC, in your daily life, if you'd ever need to know what week of the year it is.
Yeah, I think, it's good for knowing what quarter you're in. So if you're involved in finance and things like that, then you can find out which quarter of the year you're in. But I've heard that the font of the months and the day are handwritten. Is that right?
Yeah, let me just blow this up a little bit. So for those that are watching the stream, you can see that the script on the dial where it says like Sunday, Monday, or even the month December, January, February, they look like they're handwritten, and the actual person's script is the designer of this watch who works for Patek Philippe. I don't remember his name, but the designer of this watch, this was his hand script that they used to stamp on the dial. So absolutely, it gives it a very vintage look to Paddock. It's very unusual. It's not something they do. It is off the beaten path for Paddock, which does definitely bring a bit of it brings a bit of variety, I think, and that's what makes it unique. This watch is also on steel. It's 40 millimeters. It's like I see this as a perfect package, and if you see the person even wearing this, I mean, they're not wearing a tuxedo. They're not wearing a suit necessarily. Maybe that's a sport jacket that they're wearing. They got a sweater underneath and maybe a little bit of a dressier shirt, but nothing too
Yeah.
crazy. And when people talk about dress watches, like everybody says, every watch is a dress watch now. We can't just categorize pieces as dress watches. You may not like a certain style of watch, but I don't think that the term dress watch is really relevant anymore.
Is that a slightly off-white dial?
I believe it's called their opaline dial. I think
Because
it's more of an
the
eggshell.
background of the date wheel looks brilliant white, like snow white, but the main dial looks slightly
Off-white.
cream ivory color.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It is. And the hands are black. They're black polished, so that's why it kind of looks black. Um, so very unique design the Patek did. But
I
Ziggy
like
says
that.
it's a
I
bit.
like that contrast.
Ziggy says it's a busy dial. This is also, I think, part of the downside of this watch is definitely it can be a busy dial, and I'll show you a busy dial that Archie used to have. Archie used to have the 6006. Now this
Oh
watch,
yeah.
Jin and Archie and these guys love this watch. I absolutely hate this watch. And for that exact reason is it's such a busy dial. Like if you see this, it's like, oh, shit photo. Let me find a good photo here that I can actually blow up. Like this piece here, if you look at this kind of a dial, it's like, if you're looking at the numbers here, you're just like, man, like, what do any of these numbers mean? Just see like just numbers on numbers on numbers, but they love it. I think if you and this is important, right? Is I think your opinion on first glance of the watch is going to be the one that probably is the most impactful. And if you see this and you're just like, whoa, it's too busy for me, you're really gonna have to convince yourself to like it. And if I have to convince myself to like something, it's not something I want to buy.
I quite like that watch. I'm sort of used to busy-ish dials. I can separate the fact that the outermost numbers is for the date, and then the slightly inner ones, those are the hours. So I could wear that.
Lucy says
I can live
AP has
with that.
done weekly calendars on the Royal Oak Perpetuals before. Lucy says I think it's more around the brand doing a weekly calendar on its own as a complication, as opposed to showing the weeks, within a perpetual calendar itself. So, yeah, I mean, sure, to have the weeks on a perpetual calendar probably also makes sense. In that, and I can imagine that's probably a busy day. I've never seen one. I probably have to look it up. Geezer says 5212 is so underrated. Yeah, man, I've been trying to find one in Canada. Before Christmas, I was trying to buy one. I ended up buying the AP 15500 just because I couldn't find a 5212, and the 15500 came up as a really good deal. It was unworn, never registered. I still had the plastics on it, so the stickers. Um, but yeah, I think there's a fan in the channel called 1105. He's a Canadian who has a 5212. So I keep trying to ask him, hey man, if you want to sell it, like let me know, or else I'm just gonna have to wait on the waiting list in the Canadian ADs, which are a lot smaller than the US ADs. So yeah. And look,
Dodger's comment. What's Dodger's comment about? Is it about the 5212 or the 6006?
probably the 6006. I can understand it, so it can't be so bad, right? Like I think if if you really really have to try to understand it, and look closely, maybe at first glance it may not be for you. Maybe some folks like that. They like the quirkiness of it, and this
Yeah,
is what I'm talking about, right? Is when we get past your Rolex Daytona, when we get past your Pepsi, when we get past your Submariner, right? It's really diving off the beaten path, kind of on the theme of the GMT collection. Is you know people find this endearing. They find it interesting. And I think to me that's the most important part about watch collecting is that Ziggy says research, research, research. So many different watches for different lifestyles. Buy what you like. Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I think that's part of the fun. I mean, ABC for you, like discovering you know new pieces that come out or even old pieces. Like I've shown a lot of old, really weird pieces from Rolex that came out, um, and obviously with your background, your father's background, probably having seen a lot of different pieces, like how does discovering something new, like is that something that interests you in the watch collecting phase? Like what really kind of gets you going in watch collecting?
It can. I'm very much one for function. Function's very high up, uh, more than form, I'd say. I'd say the more practical a watch is, the more sort of information it shows me, the more I'm likely to wear it. That's why I can't see myself ever getting a three-hander. So people say, get a Milgauss, get an Air King, get a Tudor Black Bay 58, or even things like that. The fact that it doesn't show me anything apart from the time, I can't really justify it in my mind. So the more
Yeah.
things it does, the more things it shows me, that's what I look for in a watch.
So when I think Milgauss, the only Milgauss that really interests me is the 6541. I actually forgot the reference, so I had to put vintage. This is the vintage. This is the OG Rolex Milgauss 6541. I think if Rolex actually, to spruce up this line, went back to you got the red triangle, you kind of got just a standard type of hands. Obviously, it still has the electric lightning hand here in the middle for the seconds, but like this design to me, this would be an instant hit. Like I can't see this not selling for Rolex. I'm not a huge fan of the Z Blue and the other Milgausses. I just, to me, design wise, I just don't think that they're that great. Some people might say that this is just a little too conservative for Rolex,
I
but to
mean,
me,
yeah,
this is the icon right here of the Milgauss.
yeah, the green glass is cool with the Milgauss, but I personally think Rolex would give that to Tudor because it's too plain Jane for what I perceive Rolex to be. The brand that I perceive Rolex to want to become, the way I think they're probably quite proud that flexes you go for their watches, especially like your uh, pink gold, brown dials, and those kind of cool combinations. But I think that would probably go to Tudor first.
It also says, imagine this watch with this new ceramic bezel time killer. Yeah, like to me, if they did this red triangle, and obviously they can update it. I'm not saying that don't update a bit of this. There's a bit of texture to this style as well. Um, this
Ooh,
and arguably
nice.
if they did the ceramic on the Explorer 2, would really spruce up those specific product lines for Rolex. And I don't really like certain lines that they have. I don't even really understand. Like the Yachtmaster, like the Yachtmaster 2, I understand it has its own complication that's specific to yachting, but the standard Yachtmaster, I don't really get. Like who the target market is for that. Um, the Milgauss, I think, needs to be updated. I think that the ratings for Metas on the Omegas that you can buy with a standard Speedmaster, like I think Rolex would probably need to update this. So I think a bit more technology to go into this watch for it to maintain its real appeal. I think as its purpose of being this, electromagnetic resistant watch, to me is important. So uh, you know,
Well,
uh, Chris says I don't get but the purpose of a rotating bezel on a Milgauss is. Yeah, you know what? It's that's what I asked GMT. Not GMT. I asked ABC. Was like, sometimes in these complications that we have, like the chronographies, and like I'm curious. I'm always curious to understand what people use their chronograph for. For me, I steep tea. That's about it. I'll click it for like a minute and a half because I like my tea maybe a little bit darker, and that's about it. And I'm just like, okay, well, don't really use it for anything else, right?
I mean, I think in terms of magnetic resistance, any Omega will just trump Rolex in terms of accuracy, in terms of magnetic resistance, and to a certain extent how robust it is in terms of being shockproof. So that's why I kind of like what's it called? The Globemaster. I like the Globemaster. That's a nice watch.
You pull up the
And that
Globemaster, the Rolex Globemeister,
Omega. Omega, I
Omega.
think.
Sorry, Omega Globemaster. You even pull up Omega Globemaster. Here we go. The Globemeister. Omega
And they make an
Globemaster.
annual calendar version as well.
So it looks like a coin edge bezel, simple design, simple watch. And you said they make an
Taipan
annual
dial.
Pan dial. Yeah, absolutely.
And with
Um,
the steel, the bezel's tungsten, so it's tougher, doesn't scratch as easily, and that's got that METAS certified movement, which I mean, on my Speedy, to be honest, I've been wearing it for about a week, the 3861. And obviously I slightly changed the position overnight, but it's +2 a day. It's running at +2 now. I've been wearing it for about 5 days.
yeah, like I've had a bunch. I've had a few of the Metas. I've had the Seamaster Professional 300.
Yep.
With Metas. I have the 3861 Speedy with Metas. Like, look, you're getting a very accurate piece at 0 to +5 seconds per day with the magnetic resistance that's just more than you get in the Milgauss. So I think the Milgauss needs to be updated. If I were Rolex, if I were in their design department, I would be looking back into the catalog of the 4 digit to really, I think that would resonate. I think it would be fresh enough for that piece to get modernized. Like Zoso said, potentially with the ceramic bezel. Dodger says a gentleman would only be interested in hours and minutes. Seconds were important for the working classes.
For the
Okay,
plebs.
for the plebs.
Only plebs are interested in the seconds.
Jimmy says Archie seems different this morning. Good job, Tan and ABC. Yeah, we're trying to bring a bit of
Thanks,
value to
Jimmy.
you guys. Bit of watch talk. We're gonna kind of just go with the flow. I was free this afternoon. ABC, I convinced ABC to hop on with me, so I wasn't just talking to myself for an hour or two. NATO says sorry, I didn't actually. I was trying to catch up with the chat. NATO says the markings are 10-minute increments. Weird though. Yeah, look, it's weird. Like this is kind of what we're talking about. Is we're talking about going a bit against the grain, diving into pieces that are interesting, that for the sake of not just being kind of they're interested, different than what we usually see, and in every collection these days we're seeing everything kind of the same. And to me it's like I get bored, right? I really do. I've been collecting for over 10 years. I get very
Mhm.
bored with that. I've had a lot of pieces, a lot of the really really hype pieces, all the way up to the 5711 Blue Nautilus I've had. And so I can definitely talk about what, is that worth spending 150 grand to buy? And Sona says
Some
love
parts of
the
England, some parts of England you can buy a house for that much. Pretty nice house as well.
yeah. It's, I think a lot of people don't talk about opportunity cost. If you have 100 to 150 grand, sure, you could buy a 5711. And I'll tell you, when I had a 5711 blue, you know, you're a rock star when it comes to going to watch meets and stuff like that, and everything else, because everybody, it's just not as common. It is a little rare to see in the wild, at least where I'm at. Um, but realistically, I mean, you got the same movement that was in Archie's girl size Paddocks, the 5127. Maybe not the 5107. I don't think that had the 324, but the 5127 did. As well as the 5227, which is the current model, has the same movement. But those watches are significantly less money. So, you've got the Genta design. I think that the design of the bracelet and the case of the Royal Oak is better in my opinion. The clasp is way better. The twin trigger clasp on the Rolex is way better um, than the 5711's butterfly.
Mm.
So look, like
Yeah.
the opportunity cost. You have 100, 150K. Like you can buy some really special pieces. You can buy FP Journes. You can buy Grand Complication Patek's. You can buy, really really high end Lange watches. You can buy a ton of like cool stuff out there. Um, that you don't necessarily fit the mold of the hype. But if you're part of the hype baby train, right? The hype baby train. If that's what floats your boat. Look, we got nothing against hype pieces. If I have hype pieces.
No,
Like
not at all. I just, I mean, if I had the chance to own one, I would. I probably would. But can you pull up the annual calendar version of this watch?
I absolutely
So
can. So go Globemaster annual calendar. All right.
I
Which
like
style do you
the one
want?
with the blue hands. So the cream, the off-white dial with the, so it's got the brown strap. That's the one I like.
This one here?
It's a
Yeah.
bit chunkier because of the extra complication, but that to me, I think adds that little bit extra. It can be more of that conversation piece
You can see
because
here.
of
I
that
zoomed
annual
in here. You can
calendar.
see. Yeah, you can see. It's interesting the way you got the months. On this Pan dial that go between the minutes. And the hours. And wow, this is quite interesting.
And the
Um,
blue hands and markers are also great for legibility, especially against the cream dial. It's probably all right against this kind of grey silver one as well. Um, but yeah, I think this is a decent value proposition.
so a lot of folks are
You're
talking about
getting,
the. Yeah, sorry, I was just going to address the Nautilus. So my
yeah,
Nautilus I
yeah, go
had was
for it.
in 2016, so it had the older clasp. So I'm comparing it to the original Nautilus 5711 Blue. Yes, it does have an updated version, but to me, even when I had the 15300 Royal Oak, um, which wasn't even modern at the time, the 15400 was probably the modern version. That was a better class than the newer 5711 at the time. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, going back
yeah,
to the Globemaster, like legibility, like when I zoomed in, it was like, okay, that makes sense. And it's laid out very well. Um, and do you know how much these are going for? Like maybe GBP, like what will you can actually pick this up on the secondary?
about £5,000.
Wow, that's
Maybe even cheaper in America and probably even cheaper in Japan.
yeah,
Japan, you
that's
can get
that's
some bargains.
that's great. Higgins is in the chat. I'm gonna drop the link here if Higgins
Ah,
or Dodge.
yeah, he's also very gives unique insights into watches.
Yeah, Jonathan, if you want to hop on, you're free to join. Dodger obviously is in the chat. He can let himself on. Dodger's got keys. Zoso I know is working. But yeah, like to me, great bang per buck, unique design, just cool looking, and it's not crazy money. I think like if you take three or four of these, you're into a Pepsi. Um, and to me, it's sometimes it's like, hey, your opportunity cost at that point is, do I buy a Pepsi or do I buy this and a couple other interesting pieces? Hype Baby would
Exactly.
tell us no, and Archie would tell us no, and Bear would for sure tell us no. Um, but we got to go with what we think is also
Well,
interesting.
Bear doesn't mind his Omega watches. He's got the new Speedy 57, Speedmaster 57, the slightly thinner version, 39 mil. He loves it. He's got the chronoscope as well. Really nice watch. And, he doesn't shit on Omega. But one thing I would say is look at the price of, say, a Panda Daytona on the gray, about 20,000, maybe.
Yep, yep.
It used to be, maybe, I'm not sure now. You
Canadian
could get
dollars, Canadian dollars, you're talking about between 40 and 42,000 Canadian.
right.
So
With that money, you can get three, maybe four hard-hitting Omega watches that are superior in terms of movement as well.
don't worry, Higgins. We're going to talk about Lange soon. So I had the longest site up when I started the stream. We're actually just talking all watches. We're not talking just Omegas. We just
Yeah,
beelined here to Omegas. Yeah, look, I know Bear likes his Omegas. He hates, or I don't know if hate is a strong word. He dislikes the Speedmaster. Calls it not a luxury watch. And
Oh
look,
yeah.
him and I differ in opinion. I'm a big fan of the Speedmaster. I think it's an icon. It's got history. It's especially the newer version. Has really updated a lot of things. I used to troll Don Haynes a lot because his 1861 would run at like plus 30 seconds, and I think Omega told him it's within spec. Uh, so he had to get it regulated and whatnot. But he ended up actually updating. I talked to him a few days ago to the 3861, and he's absolutely loving it. Um, New York Strike Back says Pepsi is a classic, absolutely. Um,
Yep.
Omega brand kind of ruined what with the Swatch introduction. This is an interesting one. So Reza Binet's a friend of mine, in real life, and
Okay.
and he's new to collecting watches. Him and I are he's in my car club and stuff like that. So um, he says he feels, and as a new watch collector, he's saying that Reza says the Omega brand kind of ruined this with the Swatch introduction. So um, what do you think of that? Like, do you think that it cheapens the Moonwatch? Do you think it doesn't cheapen the Moonwatch and it has no effect? Like, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
I don't think it's ruined the brand. I think at the time, I think it slightly damaged the brand. But some people found it fun. They found it cute. I didn't. And I still don't see the attraction in a moon swatch. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's done too much damage. Whilst they still bring out really, really nice, cool pieces. So they don't really do anything for me.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I have two of these. I have the Moon, Mission to Moon, and I have the Mission to Mars. And initially when this came out, I kind of felt the same way Reza did around like, well, why are they doing this? Like, it's the same design. Why would anybody buy a Moonwatch at this point? Once I actually got one, I kind of understood that it's just a fun toy. That a lot of people are calling it a toy, just a fun, just a plastic piece that could be even arguably disposable, you could say. And I ended up just wearing it once in a while. I wear it when I'm, just doing activities that I don't want to wear my standard pieces with. So whether it actually cheapens the watch, I think it brings guys like Reza into the hobby that may not, because, and I'll tell you a story about Reza. He does not like the design of the Moonwatch. Whenever I'd wear the Moonwatch out, he would be like, "Nah, it's not for me." But as you see
Mm.
more and more of the moon swatches out there, the design, to everybody's eye starts, they start familiarizing with it, and it can definitely influence people to be more accustomed to the design. And that's why I do feel it definitely probably had some value to the brand, as well as obviously the hype and all the people waiting outside the lines of the stores and whatnot. Um, so New York
If I
Strike
had
Back
to
does.
choose one, it would probably be this blue one that you're showing. Is that Neptune, yeah?
Yeah, I think everybody. So Bear said it was discontinued yesterday on the show. It's trading for like something like $2,000 plus. This was the one that
Really?
stained people's wrists. So yeah, look, it is an attractive piece. My wife has the Uranus one, the light blue. I have
Light blue, yeah.
I have the Mars, the white and red, as well as the standard moon. New York Strike Back says once you get sub GMT speedy, then you can venture out a bit more. Absolutely. I think that when a lot of people ask me, what watch should I get? And they're not into watch collecting. I don't think they'll ever be into watch collecting. I ask them that question. Well, they won't even probably know the answer. Like, are you looking to collect watches or not? And everybody's usually like, "No, I just want a good piece." And yeah, I'll kind of offer up the same story. I'd say get a, you know, it depends on the budget. If you're lower budget, I'd say get a Tudor, Black Bay. If you're, a bit higher budget, it'd be an Omega Seamaster or a Moonwatch. And if you have a good enough budget for a Rolex, definitely a Submariner. Could be your one and done. Could be a watch you wear all the time. For me, ABC, my first high end piece was a Datejust. It was an older reference Datejust. It wasn't as old as the 1601, but it was probably a generation past the 1601. I think it might have been the 16013, which was not the fluted bezel. It had a steel bezel. Um, but yeah, just a simple 36 millimeter Datejust. And then from there, I started researching and just getting into it a lot more. And it went from there. So it's hard to say, like with a new collector, like, hey, are you going to be a watch collector or not? So I try to give them something that's a bit safe in that sense. I don't go buy what you
Mhm.
love, because you got people who are just going to buy like a Cartier Ballon Bleu and then just get absolutely destroyed when they want to sell it to get into watch collecting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it does. I think you do have to hold a watch. I mean, I saw my optometrist, my optician. He had a Datejust 41 on Jubilee, but I think it was the green fluted dial. That looked really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not I'm not necessarily a Datejust type. I mean, I would think, well, for not much more, you can get an older version sub. Then again, I've got to confess to this. I'm probably going to get slaughtered for this, but I used to say that Submariner was an overhyped or souped up Datejust because it's the same movement. But once I held it in my hand, I wore it, the bigger crown and things like that, I got it immediately.
For me, I pulled up on the screen the piece that I had. It was a 16030, not the 130, which was the two tone. So not a fluted bezel. It has the engine turn bezel,
Engine
which is,
turned, yeah.
yeah, which is steel. Simple silver dial, Jubilee bracelet. Just a very, like, classic, what you would assume a Datejust would look like. And yeah, this was the first piece I bought. And I really enjoyed it. It was funny. I think I wore it out somewhere, and someone said, "This is not small." And I didn't understand the concept of it at the time. And this was like probably pre 2010, so maybe 2008, 2009, something like that. And even at that time, you had larger pieces. So, it was interesting when someone said, "Isn't that a little small?" And I have a normal size wrist, I have a 7-inch wrist. Um, but to me, this is the watch that got me into it. Wasn't very expensive at the time. They just could be had for pretty cheap at the time. But got me into collecting, got me into finding Archie. And when I found Archie, I really watched a lot of his videos, the early stuff, where he used to talk a lot about the Datejust, it being a sports watch that, it's probably the most versatile watch. It was a watch, I think he even asked a bunch of women, comparing like
Yeah.
the 5107 and the Navitimer and a bunch of other watches, say which is the most attractive watch. And it ended up being the Datejust, because I think we're programmed to think that this is what a Rolex looks like. Rolex is, when you watch tennis or you watch Formula One, when you see Rolex, the brand, has the fluted
Golf as
bezel.
well.
Yeah,
Don't
golf. It
forget
has,
golf.
yeah, golf. It has the fluted bezel, right? So when you think of Rolex, most people will probably think of this design. They may not think of the Submariner. The Submariner, when you see it, the design of it has been copied so much that absolutely people would be like, yeah, like that's a Rolex, and whatnot. So let's see what Jonathan says here. I was referring to your comment that the Moonwatch hurt the brand. Mark the shark. Numbers for both brands say the opposite. Yeah, look, like it's how you perceive it, right? Like, did it drive hype to the brand? Absolutely. It's probably, it was such an amazing event to see that, I had friends that weren't into watches that were buying them just because they just liked it, or, that they read it on Hypebeast, or they read it somewhere that is something to get. And yeah, like it definitely, I think the positive part of it is it got people into watches, or thinking about watches that, you know, kids these days. I mean, ABC, I think, I don't know if you have kids or not, but if you do, I don't know, your kids, if you do have kids, are they interested in watches? Do they like watches? Do they not care?
They, I'd say they're loosely interested, but I think it's more a case of they've heard various rappers and stuff talk about watches, so they know of AP, they know of Nautilus, Rolex, of course. Whereas I try and preach the have an appreciation for what it is in as a timepiece, not as a piece of bling on your wrist.
Yeah, and that's actually interesting things. Hoff on Smash, who works in the music industry, for a label that is very well known for hip hop artists. I asked him about that. I said, hey, like, in the 90s and the 2000s when I grew up, rappers were speaking about Rolex, Rolex, Rolex. You see Tupac wearing on his album cover a day date. So it was the watch was commonly associated with the hip hop culture or rappers that were looking to portray a certain image. When you kind of fast forward over time, you get into the Jay Z era. Jay Z's talking about APs. He's talking about APs and rollies. So AP starts coming into play at that point. And then if you fast forward even further, Migos, is a current rap group. Um, they talk about paddock, and they talk about paddocks that aren't iced out, just plain Jane. There's even a track, by a rapper named ASAP Ferg called Plain Jane, which talks about a plain Jane day date. So rappers are moving even away from these customized dials and all this like bling to just, with the advent of the internet and knowledge that's going out there and people kind of laughing at them, you know, I think they've kind of realized that like, no, like, watches that are just plain Jane are probably what's going to have a bit more value.
I think Drake has got some really, really expensive Pateks and APs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really follow, rappers' collections and stuff like that. I do like, hip hop music. So that's where I hear it. Chris is asking the panel, what's on everyone's wrist today? Hoping to hear Squale from ABC and Rodent One voice.
Squale. It's iconic.
You must be chuffed to
How the hell is Squale iconic? The guy just spouts out and out lies. But he kind of took a shit on Daniel Wellington because he never gave him watches as freebies. So he then started going for Daniel Wellington. But yeah,
Pull
that
up
was a long time ago.
in honor of Chris, we're gonna pull up the Squale Lion Shark. This is the TGV watch. Not many people may remember this.
I
People may
remember
not.
that.
Yeah, not everybody. Some people are new to the Archieverse. TGV is the original Rodent 1.0. He made the TGV Lion Shark. I don't think Archie's going to like me showing this on the show, but I'll show it for a bit of fun. On the wrist for me today, Tudor Black Bay, 58 blue on a strap. ABC, what about you? What do you got on the wrist today?
I've got a 16610, but on an Everest rubber strap. Let me see if I can
Ooh,
show it to all
show us,
y'all.
show us, show us.
Show how
I'm gonna
much you
put you
can
full
see
screen here.
that.
There you go.
So what I've committed the cardinal sin. I've got a fake glide lock clasp because I can, and I just use this.
Ooh, that
It's a
might be that
6610.
might show up on the dungeon tonight. The clip might get clipped on the dungeon.
It probably would, but I make no apologies for it because it's functional and it preserves the bracelet. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So Jonathan says Porsche design Chrono One 2022. Is that 2022? I'm
Tan, can
looking
I
it up
just
here.
break off to have dinner? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, go for it, go for it. I'll man the ship in the chat while you go. I'll pull up some watches. I will drop the link for anybody who's interested in joining. Um,
Cheers.
talk some watches with me. Yeah, you're free to hop off if I'm still around. Hop back on. You have the link. Um,
True. Cheers.
let's yeah, cheers. We'll see you in a bit. So let's see. Porsche design. Let's pull up Porsche design. Um, let's see here if we got the right one here, Jonathan. Let me know if this is the Porsche design. Here, I'll share the stream. I'll share myself here in this. Um, add to the stream. Jonathan, let me know if this is the piece that we're looking at, the Porsche design chronograph 1. This is what I believe is what he's talking about. Got a Porsche design GP 2022 edition. Jonathan, let me know if this is the piece that you're wearing today. He says, wrist check Porsche design Chrono 1 re-edition 2022. Porsche design released a piece a few days ago. I'm gonna see if I can find it on Hodinky. We were looking at it on the mainstream just a few days ago. So yeah, here we go. So you got the GP 2023 edition. So I think that's the 2022, Jonathan. Let me just Yeah, that is Jonathan onto the stream. Mr. Higgins, how are you?
Hey, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Hopefully, I got the
Sure.
right watch here for you, Jonathan. Is this the watch you're wearing?
That's exactly in my ballpark, but that is not the watch that I'm wearing. That is a limited edition that came on top. That is the Ice Race limited edition. So that came a little bit later. My watch looks virtually the same, but I don't have that wide strap and not the extra goodies.
Not the extra goodies. I'm going to share the new one, Jonathan. This is the 2023
Yeah,
DP edition.
that is the
What
2023. Yes.
What is your take on? So maybe we can start off by just, you know, we know obviously you're German. You grew up, as far as I know, I don't know you very well. You said you grew up in near or in Stuttgart, which is near Zuffenhausen, where Porsche is based.
That
And talk to us
that's right.
about Porsche design. Porsche makes a lot of things. They make like the Carrera sunglasses. Talk to us about their watches because I don't know too much about Porsche design.
Well, I'm happy to talk about it because I have a soft spot for the brand. So you so first of all the male members of the Porsche family, their first name is Ferdinand, which is quite confusing. So you have a
Hmm.
lot of Ferdinand Porsches in the history of the car brand.
Hmm.
And the designer of the 911 was Ferdinand Alexander Porsche.
His son, right? It was Porsche's the original owner's son, right?
As far as I know, yes, or the grandson. I'm getting
Or the
confused
grandson.
with all those Ferdinands. So
Yes,
I
yes,
think it
yes,
was the son.
yes,
So
yes,
he
yes.
designed the 911. But then later there was a kind of agreement that nobody from the Porsche family is allowed to work for the company anymore. So that
Interesting.
meant that Ferdinand Alexander Porsche had to find something else to work on.
I see.
So he,
It's interesting because that's similar to like the Lamborghini story where Tonino doesn't work in the brand itself. He does his own design. But yeah, continue. Sorry for interrupting.
mm, I'm not too familiar with the Lamborghini story, so I can only say yes if you say so.
No
I'm not
problem. No
doubting
problem.
it.
No problem.
So Ferdinand Alexander Porsche then started his own design or consulting company, which is located in Zell am See in Austria. And his first project was this famous Porsche Chronograph 1. You said it yesterday correctly, the first blackened out chronograph, which pays also tribute to the no, it's not the tachometer. How do you call the thing that counts the revs of an
Uh,
engine?
the tachymeter, tachymètre in French.
Is that the tachymeter? I thought that is the speedometer, but
I was just asking. I was just pronouncing the tachymeter piece. I
okay.
wasn't. Yeah.
So that is the reference. You're driving sports cars. I- you're not having a manual at the moment, don't you?
I don't have a manual now.
Yeah.
They don't make them anymore.
The issue with a manual gear shift is if you rev it until the limit, you better not over rev it,
And then
particularly
downshift, which is called the money shift. Yes, you are right.
yes, particularly with the old engines that don't have a computer controlled unit that then cuts the engine off if you over rev it.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
So you better watch out what your tachometer says, and that is the purpose of that red hand, that
Ah,
you
I
you keep your
see.
focus on the road, but you also have a blink of an eye to how your engine is doing. So that is
Okay.
the concept behind it,
No, it's
and
very cool.
and that is
I'm gonna show some of the classic Porsches
yeah.
going in the snow. I don't know how much snow you guys get around Stuttgart, but this is
Not much.
pretty.
No, no, this is in Zell am See. That is the Porsche Ice Race. I'm gonna
Yeah, you're
go
right. It
into
is the
that a
ice
little
race.
bit later
Sure, sure,
if you
sure.
allow me.
Absolutely.
So, so the first project was the Chronograph 1 by Ferdinand Alexander Porsche. It was groundbreaking because it was all black, including a black bracelet, and it was manufactured by a company called Olfina. Maybe you heard that.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't. No.
Yeah, the problem with those blacked out watches was that the black coating was really bad. So you see a lot of those vintage watches that that are in terrible shape because the black color is flaking off everywhere.
I see.
Um,
See.
One of the novelties on that chronograph one, which was introduced 51 years ago, 1972, was that they used the brand new 7750 movement as well.
The
So
Valjoux. Yeah.
yes, that was the first watch that used this particular movement.
I'm gonna
Very
interrupt
soon,
you here. Typical Archie style. We got Dodger 50. I don't know what the current. I think it's
Polish zloty, Polish
Polish
zloty.
Polish Zloty, 50 Polish Zloty. Thank you, Dodger. Thank you, Tan, for starting up a pre-show for us. Yes, for our European friends on the mainland of Europe or in the UK and Ireland, this is for you guys. We wanted to make sure we were catering so that you guys don't have to stay up at ungodly hours to watch the freak show tonight. So, a bit of watch talk before we get into the freak show. Continue, Jonathan. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the issue with the old original watch that has been produced over many years, but the quality of the black coating was really bad.
And it was bad throughout, like because you said it was bad originally. Would you say it was the coating was just bad throughout until modern times, or is it just that original one?
Well, they stopped a couple of years later producing this chronograph because then after Ferdinand Alexander Porsche made a collaboration with IWC that you also mentioned yesterday.
Yes.
And that was a big breakthrough for Porsche design, but also for IWC. Because I think it was starting 1978. 1978, IWC was almost dead after the quartz crisis.
That's right.
They had very conservative design. They had the engineer or engineer, which didn't really go well. All the other watches were very old-fashioned, very boring. And Ferdinand Alexander Porsche brought a very clean, masculine, sporty design language to IWC, which, in my opinion, saved their asses. In addition to the construction of the Da Vinci by Kurt Klaus, who made that module on the 7750.
Right.
But that is a different story. So we're talking now before the collaboration with IWC. They made this watch. The quality was bad, particularly the old bracelet was bad. And then this particular watch disappeared. Then after the collaboration with IWC, Ferdinand Alexander Porsche bought a watch company.
I see. Okay, I didn't know that.
After that cooperation, so the cooperation with IWC went almost 20 years, if I remember correctly. And then he bought Eterna.
Eterna, yep.
Yeah. So from there on, Porsche design watches were made by Eterna. And 10 years ago, I think 10 years ago, no, it was a little bit longer. I think 20 years ago, they made a limited edition Eterna watch, but it was not faithful to the old one. They tweaked the dial, the logos, and everything like that. So it was not really faithful. They tried it again 10 years ago, was not faithful, and the cooperation with Eterna ended when Ferdinand Alexander Porsche sold Eterna. So they split apart.
Let's see, okay.
And Ferdinand Alexander Porsche or Porsche Design, they started their own manufacturer in Solothurn in Switzerland.
Interesting.
So they have.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jonathan, like I think when everybody sees this, they kind of just see it as they might even attune it to a fashion brand, right? Like there's a lot of collaborations that go on with watches and cars, and when they think of Porsche design, they just think of it as it's Porsche's just outsourced it to some cheap manufacturer. But obviously, this history is telling otherwise. So I'm gonna let you continue. I just wanted to bring some context to some of the new viewers that are hopping
I
on.
agree with you partly that they lost a little bit their track. The problem is if you have one heavy hitter and you try to reproduce that success and put it into a modern age and into a modern design, you often fail. And that is my personal opinion about Porsche design. After the cooperation with IWC, they didn't really find their way. That is my personal opinion.
One piece of this piece that I noticed here is this tractor.
Yeah,
I'm gonna zoom it in here. This little tractor with I don't know if it's a Yeti or something like that on
that
it.
is a Yeti, yes.
Do you know a lot about the tractor history of Porsche? Do you want to kind of talk about that? Because it's you got it on they've stamped it on the case back here. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that there's a reference. Maybe you want to talk a bit about this little
Yeah,
detail on the
so
watch.
Porsche used to make tractors as well, if I know correctly. And that is just a funny logo using that red tractor. I think it's a Porsche tractor, and have a
Yep.
Yeti on. Last year for that ice race, they had this 550 Spider that you just showed
Oh yeah.
on the case back engraved.
Now is that is
So
that yours that has the 550 Spider on it?
no, no. You have it's difficult. I have the normal limited edition, and that is the ice race limited edition. That is a different limited edition. So it's a little bit difficult to explain. Let me try it that way. Last year, Porsche Design, with their own manufacturer, they decided to recreate that chronograph 1, the 50-year-old watch,
Yep.
in better quality, in titanium, totally faithful to the original. That's not the watch that is here on the screen.
Right.
So, so they recreated that in a limited edition of 500 pieces. On top of that, they made the limited edition Ice Race, 50 pieces, with that white strap.
This white
That
strap is
was
awesome.
last
I
year.
I actually really love. I really think this is a well designed piece. Like that's why I asked you about it, and I wanted to
Yeah.
talk. I know everybody in the chat's kind of like, and I'm gonna read Zoso's comment. I have an incredibly boring watch that no one wants as well, so I can relate to this. But again, I think Jonathan, when you kind of first commented, you're like, I don't know much about Omegas. Today's kind of topic is it goes from GMT's collection review from yesterday about going off the beaten path, getting away from just the group think that perpetuates on YouTube around, hey, you need to get hype pieces. I want to talk about interesting pieces. That's why I do want your take, because I do want to go in depth on this of what you find unique, why you made that purchase. Maybe we can even talk about your world time after this, because trolling aside on everything, and I've trolled you on this. I am interested in the story because that's very important to me. So, please continue.
So I'm not sure if I'm talking about the World Champ because Archie threatened me to throw me off
That's okay. Don't
the
worry.
moment I
We're
talk.
the European show is run by the Europeans.
Okay.
Archie can stick on to the Aussie show, and the North Americans are run by
Yeah.
Bears. So you got full reign, so we can talk about your world time in a second. But you
Okay.
mentioned you're wearing this piece. They've released obviously this one a few days ago.
Yep.
If maybe let me ask you. So
Mm.
if you were if there was a collector, and I know I've owned a lot of Porsches, a lot of my friends own Porsches, and outside of just the Porsche connection, for a buyer, for a consumer, why would you recommend this watch or any Porsche design piece as a piece to add to a collection?
So my personal advice would be only to get the chronograph 1. I don't like any other Porsche design watch that is currently in their range. Uh, I have a soft spot for the chronograph 1, and what we have on the screen is just a variant of the watch that was reissued last year. The PD logo is correct. The PD logo on the crown is correct. The dial is almost correct, with the exception of those two sub dials at 12 and 6. The old one had white hands. This
Mm-hmm.
has red hands.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
other
you say
than
the
that,
red, but you gave the story of the red originally when you're
yeah,
talking
but
about the tachometer. Sorry,
yeah, but I'm talking about the big second hand of the chronograph. That
do you
was
not?
red.
Yeah. Do you
That
not
was
think that
red.
the sub dials, because just from the symmetry perspective, they were keeping the tachometer theme going for the sub registers as well?
Look, from a technical perspective, we could argue all night long. The only thing that is important to me is the old one, the original one, the OG 50 years ago, and that had the white hands on the subdials. Now I'm going to tell you why I bought this watch. I'm
Please.
58 years old, and I remember when I was a kid, my first touch with expensive watches was this blackened out chronograph 1. Because I got to know the price, and I thought I cannot believe that anybody is paying such a ridiculous price for such a watch. Back in 1972, this watch was the same price like a Rolex Submariner.
Wow, that is very interesting. Is this the one? Is this the piece, the original?
That is the new one that you just showed. Is the old one?
All right, let me pull up the old one here. This was the original.
So that is one of the old ones.
I see. Okay.
You can see it has two hands, two hands for the chronograph, the red hand and that long white hand.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yep, I'm circling both the white hand and
so the red hand counts the second of the chronograph, and the white hand counts the minute of the chronograph.
Wow, interesting.
And that shows us the movement is a Lemania 5100. Which has been used after the Valju 7750 has been put on hold. The 7750 was introduced in 1972 or 1971, and it was not a smash hit.
Right.
So very soon after, the 7750 was put dormant, just like the El Primero, which launched in 1969.
I have a very contentious relationship with the El Primero. I can get into that with you in a bit, but I owned a Seiko Speed Timer, a 6139 from dated March 1969, which would have been before any production El Primero would have hit the market. So, yeah, and that's a whole story in and of itself of the original automatic chronographs. We got Mike the Snake joining the European chat. We got ABC.
Hey, Mike.
Jonathan, the European stream seems to be popular. We got a full panel here.
Wow.
Hey, guys.
ABC is back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
so, guys, just to bring you guys up to speed, we got Jonathan who's educating us on the Porsche design chronograph 1. We have an original piece up here. We showed the 2023 model a few seconds ago. Jonathan, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on the chronograph 1.
The 2023 model is a gray titanium, so that is not blackened. Only the buttons and the crown is blackened. So here you can identify the 2023 edition, and that is only the ice race edition. So and that is limited to 250. Now the bad news is, I've been invited to the 2023 ice race down in Zell am See in Austria by Porsche Design Watches, because my dealer knows.
I don't see that being bad, Jonathan. What's bad about that?
Say it again.
I don't see that being bad news. I'm waiting to hear the bad news.
Yeah, here comes the bad news. I just received a telephone call this morning. The ice race is cancelled because they have 10 degrees centigrade down in Zell am See, and they are not able to ice the airfield, just like last year.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, it's been crazy warm here in Canada as well, where I'm at.
Yeah.
So that definitely is a bummer.
That really sucks, because
well, I was going to say, what I find very endearing about Europe and even especially the UK. I think I was talking to somebody the other day about the UK and just the hill races that they have and just the racing culture that exists. Whether it's in Europe, and I'm not going to say the UK is not part of Europe, but in the UK specifically as well. Just the racing culture and the history of races is something I find absolutely fascinating. But yeah, no, definitely. Go ahead, Mike.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
Mike, you're allowed to interrupt here. We're not We're not gonna growl at you.
Okay. They really do embrace their racing, and they have other forms of racing that we don't have here, like hill climbs. We very rarely. I mean, Pikes Peak would be considered, America's biggest hill climb, but race to the top of the mountain is a pretty popular thing in Europe.
JB's asking you, Mike, have you ever raced on ice?
No. I've driven on ice and slid around on it, but I've never raced on it.
I drove on ice
So,
this morning. Go ahead,
so
Jonathan. Please continue.
you guys may ask what is so special about the ice race. The ice race is located in Zell am See, where the Porsche family owns a couple of properties, and the son of Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, who now runs Porsche Design, he's still living there, and he's organizing that ice race. They used to do those ice races in the 1950s, and the biggest or the craziest thing is you have skiers that are attached on ropes after behind rally cars or race cars. So you have skiers behind cars. So and everything is a big hoot on that frozen airfield. But unfortunately, doesn't happen this year. I was so happy to get this invitation. I told my AD, if you invited me on a yacht in Monaco, I couldn't be happier. Now that you invited me to that ice race.
Jonathan, I'm going to pivot here, and we've talked about Porsche and Porsche design. Thank you for obviously all the information. Hopefully, it's brought some context to a lot of folks that were looking at this piece on Hodinkee. The Joker says, Jonathan, good knowledge. I'm going to pivot to world times because obviously your piece that you're creating is world time. I'm going to start by talking about on the world time the cities on a world time. So I pulled up a classic Patek Philippe world time. And just to look at some of the cities that are a bit different than you'd see on a world time today. So kind of starting in the Middle East, you got Cairo, Baghdad, and then you got I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Aden or Aden, which I believe is in Yemen. So then you got Bombay, Calcutta, which I think now they use Karachi. Patek Philippe uses Karachi as a time zone. If you look at Beijing, I don't know who's typing there. It's I think that might be Mike. Let me just mute Mike real quick. Yeah, it's Mike. Mike, you're muted. Just whenever you stop typing, you can unmute yourself. Peiping, which is probably a name for Beijing even before Peking, was there. You have the Auckland Islands, Fiji Islands, Samoa. You got the Klondike, which is interesting. And also what I find interesting, they use California. They don't use Los Angeles. They use the entire state of California as a time zone, which is very interesting. And another interesting city I see here is I'll say the French way, Montreal or Montreal, which is a city in Canada, not the capital city, not even the largest city, which would be Toronto in Canada, which is in the same time zone they have as New York. So a couple of interesting cities. Obviously, some of these other ones are pretty normal, like London, Paris, Berlin, Moscow, Cape Town. So just on that topic of cities, Jonathan, why don't you talk to us about the cities on your piece? I don't have a picture of your piece, so I might make you full screen just so we can see some of the cities. Describe kind of your choice of cities as you designed your piece.
If you allow me, I will come back in 2 minutes. Then I can give you a proper draft of my.
If you could, yeah, absolutely. If you could, me and Mike are here, so we can chat while you come back. Absolutely,
yeah,
that'd be great.
I'm gonna join you in 2 minutes. Okay, I'll be back.
No problem. So, Mikey, we're going to go into world time talks. Archie is kind of told Jonathan not to talk about his world time on his stream, but we're not in the Australian stream. We're not in the American stream. We're in the European stream. And in the European stream, we want to obviously have our Euro friends join and chat watches.
Sure. So. Were you aware that I used to race a Porsche?
Yeah, you mentioned you used to race I believe it was either a 928 or a 914. I don't remember.
It was a 9146.
Yes,
and it was modified to GT2 level. So I raced against the Ferraris and the Corvettes and
beautiful.
And 911s, other 911s. It was what? Go ahead.
I was going to say the 914 is a very interesting car. The last time I was in Chicago, I was just driving around and I saw one, and there's a few that come to our local Porsche club. You don't see a ton of them around. Obviously, not as prevalent as the prevalent you see around like the 911s, but
911. No,
it's a very interesting car. It's not for everybody. The design's a bit unique, but definitely a cool car, I would say.
they're sold as Volkswagens in Europe, and only the 914-6 cars were taken from the Volkswagen factory and taken over to Porsche to be outfitted with the 6-cylinder engines.
Mikey, we got a super chat here from Curly's Fat Gut, $2.99 Australian. When I get hangry, I get mad. I get mad. It's our best attempt at a Chicago accent. I get mad.
There's a TV commercial about that too, where some guy goes there.
Curly's Fat Gut. Any donations obviously are very much appreciated. We will take the time to read super chats. If you have watch questions, we will take the time to dive into the watch questions. We will not simply just rapid fire them. So
World Timers are made by. He's pulling up his specs of a Patek.
No, so Jonathan, as far as I know, is designing his own piece that is a World Time complication. So the World Time complication is not necessarily unique to Patek. It's there's a lot of brands that make a World Time.
No, that's what I was asking. Is like who else makes World Time?
Yeah,
is this a Patek? This pictured a Patek?
This is a classic. Patek Philippe World Time piece. But there's a lot of World Time watches out there that you can look at. And I think there's just a ton of them out there. Mont Blanc has them, and other brands. Vacheron has them. IWC has them. I'll pull up just I'll share this tab instead. Here's a couple of examples. So you can even see an overseas here on the right, World Timer, right there. Okay. You got a Christopher Ward not on a NATO strap here, World Timer. You've got an IWC with a World Time.
That bracelet, that Vacheron bracelet, I'm so in love with that.
We got a super chat here from 500-pound Curly, rounded up from 468 pounds for £1.79. I apologize for my gut. It's out of control. We got the Sauv. I'll tell everybody, sorry about the name of Savron. So when Sauv first came on the channel, he joined the channel as Sovereign, spelt like the sovereign, as in the royal, the sovereign. And Archie kept calling him Savron. And I can remember myself and other people trolling in the chat were just like spelling his name like he's spelled today, Savron. So the Burke's Peerage Sauv is saying, Mr. GMT's has so many chips on his day-date crystal. Every time he wears it, he's attacked by a flock of seagulls. Thank you, Mr. Savron. Jonathan, let me just drop it here for you.
Oh yeah, he's asking for the link.
All right, there's the link, Mikey. If you don't mind, just checking people that are looking to join. We don't want to have any issues today.
Sure.
Just verify anybody who's looking to join. But that's for Jonathan.
If I recognize, we don't want any strangers on, right?
So talking about World Time. So the complication is not just made by Patek Philippe. I used the Patek Philippe example specifically around there we go. Jonathan
I just let him on.
Yeah, thank you. So Jonathan, we were just educating Mike, and maybe John, this might be a good start point for you. So Mikey was asking kind of like, this Patek Philippe, is that the only brand that makes a World Time? I obviously showed him that they weren't. So Jonathan, why don't you start off with the complication itself, the World Time complication, why you chose that complication before we get into your piece?
Wrong question, because I didn't choose the watch because of the World Time complication. I chose the watch because of its looks, and particularly because of the way the lugs have been shaped. That drew me into the watch, and then I started educating myself a little bit about the world times and everything like that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the watch itself, so the complication was already you didn't really have a choice. It's like, hey Jonathan, you're gonna have to, create your own watch, but you have to use this format, this world time
Exactly. Yeah.
complication.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's great. Just real quickly, NATO says he used to call you Tanzilin. This is very true. I remember Tanzil. Yes, we were talking about just Archie mispronouncing names, which was great from back in the day. So Jonathan, we're now into your watch. You've chosen a specific, like you said, design of the world time. Why don't you, if you're educating us just from the start point of where you started on the design and your thought process around it, we'd be interested to hear that.
One second. Let me just pull up the article that drew me into
Sure.
it. BC. I'm a bad multitasker, so I have to
No
talk to
problem.
myself when I'm putting up.
No problem. If you want to add it in the private chat, I can even just pull it up for you to make it easy.
Yeah. Mike, just one word of warning. There is a guy with a German username who is trying to get access as soon as I'm on. This is a guy who tries to dox me with my real name.
Okay.
So be careful letting people with German names in.
I won't.
Real names.
All right, Jonathan,
We
you
have
are now sharing.
Jonathan Quayle. There's another Jonathan.
Yeah,
Quayle
that
trying
is me. That is me. 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Let me
that
show
was
you.
just him sharing his screen.
Yeah, I'm just sharing the screen. So yeah, here we are. Can you pull that screen?
Yep, you're
up?
good.
Oh,
You're good. You're good.
Okay.
I pulled it up.
beautiful, man.
So in I screwed up. 1 year ago, I came across with an article on monochrome about a BCHH world timer. Yes, that was the article. Best of 2021. Our favorite traveler watches of the year, and going a little bit down here, I saw the BCHH Celestial Voyager, which is here. 1 second.
Wow.
Here. That is the watch that I...
You can pinch the zoom if you want to just make it a bit bigger.
Yeah. No, it's too big. 1 second.
Your 50-year-old hands have a very strong pinch. Still got it, Jonathan.
Yeah. So what...
It's okay.
I can't show you the lux on this article. It linked to a different article where I could see the lux, and that was the main feature that pulled me into this particular watch. This is a world timer, as you know. The only comparable world timer, in my opinion, is the Patek Philippe world timer, because it also has that cloisonné enamel dial. Archie always spells it incorrectly. He spells it being a Khaleesi dial, but
dial. You mean a cloisonné dial is what
exactly,
it is,
right?
Yes.
The true name is cloisonné.
Yep.
And I'm trying to find an article, or you may...
Jonathan, if you want to take some time to find the article, I can just kind of talk about this. So, Mikey, look, like, as we were talking about earlier, like, world times are not unique to Patek Philippe. A lot of brands make it. Cloisonné dial, and I can, if you see, I think it's maybe Jamie Opulence has one that is a cloisonné dial, 5130. Well, I don't know if it's a 5130, but he does have one with a similar pattern dial, and very, very beautiful. I think the design of this one, like, you got the blue, you got the oceans, you got even the landmass.
Is cloisonné referred to the process in which they paint the dial and put the print on the dial?
So it is a decoration technique.
I've seen a video.
Yeah, no, it's been used by a lot of civilizations in the past, like, Chinese civilizations and others. It's just a decoration technique,
Okay.
where they used enamel, to do the design and whatnot. So it's just, he's referring to really just the design pattern of the specifics of the dial. So just look kind of at the centerpiece of it with the continents, the ocean. That's what he's speaking about.
Okay.
But yeah, look, it's different than your standard world time. If you remember, Archie's world time has a bit of guilloche, on the dial, and then you just have the cities around the border. So not as fancy, I would say, as
I see. Okay.
Yeah. But again, right, we're talking today about just watches that kind of go beyond, that go beyond. Jonathan, do you want me to pull this one up? Just let me know when you want me to pull it up.
I disagree with you, Tanzil, because in my opinion, cloisonnés are amazing, and it's not only a decoration technique. It is a very unique way of creating a dial.
Yeah, it's a work of art. It's a work of art.
Can you please pull that image up
Yes,
that I just?
Yes. Okay, here we go. Let's get into it,
Wow.
Jonathan.
Yeah. So what you see here is a mixture of micro painting and cloisonné. You see on the upper part of this dial, you see flat gold wires, just like a noodle, like a flat noodle, and they are attached to the dial vertically, and those build the borders between the different colors of the enamel. So into those little fields, you fill an enamel powder, and then you put it in the oven. And those gold wires, those are gold wires. They are bent by hand. They are all made by hand, and they enclose those little fields that you can see later. And that is the root of the word. Cloisonner, enclose. It has something to do with closing.
Wow. Just to stop here, typical Archie fashion. We have a super chat. Lightball, £8.99. Thank you, Lightball. Tan, you must be commended for your continued contribution. Being a host can be a thankless job. Don't underestimate what a good job you do for many people listening. Thank you, Lightball. Look, I would like to say, obviously, we've got a lot of great panelists. Jonathan's offering up a lot of his time to do some education for us today. We want to ensure that we're doing a lot of watch talk for the community. And for look, Mikey, just if you don't know something, we're all about learning, right? We want to learn. This is the important part of the watch journey. Yeah, the important part of the watch journey to me is learning, right? It's going past just the hype pieces, the hype for the sake of the hype, and that's why I asked Jonathan to hop on, because I was very interested in his watch and his logic and his thought process around why he chose that piece. Because learning someone's journey and story to me is the most interesting part about this. So, Jonathan, I will stop interrupting. We'll get back to your story. So please continue.
No, please interrupt me as much as you want. I'm not.
Mikey, you got permission today to interrupt John.
Absolutely.
With a lot of questions.
Well,
okay, Jonathan, let me know when you want to pull this back up.
Yeah.
I find that story or that picture and the explanation behind it super interesting. Now, on the picture you posted previously, it looked like down below there was some like little leaflets or branches, like hand engraved. Will those remain, or will those melt into a shape? And am I correct in understanding that like those gold pedals that you say were vertically connected to the dial and then folded over, and then a powder, enamel powder, was put into each pedal, and then it was put in an oven? Did the gold did the gold melt and then encapsulate the enamel and then just melt into a shape?
No, the gold doesn't melt. The gold remains where it is. Can you pull up that image that I just have here on the screen?
Yes, sir.
So
you were all set.
I'm trying to explain it to you. So you see here that world map, and
the heavy pinch to zoom. A little bit less.
I can't do less. That is my problem.
Oh man, just all or nothing.
it goes, yeah, it all or nothing. That is my problem.
Okay, that's
So
okay.
you see,
I can see this. Yeah, neat.
you see those
Okay.
gold borders. So those
Yes.
are the gold wires. So the
Ah,
gold borders stay, and they fill them with this glass powder, the colored glass powder, and that melts in the oven. The gold doesn't melt.
okay, okay. And then do they machine the top flat and that results in like the borders being defined like this?
Well, when the glass melts, it should go flat, but you know, it's just like water, so it has a little bit of a dome, and at the end they are making the surface of the enamel dial flat.
Okay, so
So
probably just by sanding or very delicate.
Yeah, it
Okay,
is very delicate because the first dial that the manufacturer made cracked. So they
yeah.
made a custom-made dial, and by printing the logo on, the dial cracked, unfortunately.
Ah.
So they had to start all over again.
Well, I know definitely about different materials and mixing them because you know they different materials expand and contract at different rates, and so you can have things that go together perfectly, and then you know they go through a heat cycle or a heat range that's unacceptable to them, and boom, they break apart or they
Exactly.
you know.
But can you see those borders around the countries? So everything is bent by hand. So those the first process is they start with the gold wire. Then they start to bend it by hand, make those little borders everywhere, and then they fill in the glass powder. That is how
Wow.
a cloisonné dial is being made. And you can also see here different shades of blue. So that is very delicate because then you don't use only one color of powder. You're mixing them a little bit with a little brush
Can I ask you,
to achieve
Jonathan,
that.
to interrupt you here? What is the rate of failure on these dials? Because obviously it's very intricate. You know, and I remember watching one of your streams where you talked about how you were working a guilloche machine, and I think you fiked it up a bit.
Yes.
What would you say is the rate of failure on one of these dials if someone's producing it?
I think the rate is very high because they are firing it up 20 times until it's ready. I read a number, but I don't want to make a number up, but there is quite a high number of failures.
Okay, so a high rate of failure, yeah. I mean, look, because I think Mike's asking, he's an artisan himself, so I think he's very interested in this kind of understanding of how is it made, what is the process, because it brings a lot of context to just, someone looks at this watch and is like, oh, it's a shitter, fuck off, right? Like, you know, they really need to understand the actual depth of the piece and really the work that's put into it, because I think that's what makes it really special.
Yeah,
I would give everything I own to get my hands on a guilloche rose lathe, just so I could make my own guilloche. Can you explain how they do the sparkly kind of space looking out around the outside? I mean, as an airbrush artist, I would dip a toothbrush into paint and run my thumb across it and flick, you know, paint at the piece and make what would look like space. You know, it would spray little dots.
Mike, I have to disappoint you, but this is a true mineral. This is a true stone called aventurine.
Okay. So, aventurine, yeah, okay.
So this is natural. You have to keep in mind many watch companies have been starting aventurine dials, but usually what they call aventurine is glass with those sparkly particles inside. To my knowledge, Sven Andersen and BCHH are the only ones who use real aventurine. And when I asked the question, so your aventurine is artificial, can you make it in a different color? They looked at me just like an alien, and they said, "Look, that's a true stone. We can't do anything about it." So that's just how it goes. Here, those are the lugs that
beautiful lugs.
Yeah.
Beautiful lugs.
Now, are these welded on lugs?
Those are welded on. The designer calls them eagle wings. Sven Andersen, who is an 80-year-old master wizard of independent watchmaking, is calling them pixely ears. So you take your pick how you call them.
I think those are some of the most stylish lugs I think I've ever seen. Honestly, shape-wise.
To be honest, those lugs are the reason why I bought this particular watch.
Yeah, these lugs. I've never seen a watch with lugs like this. Yeah. And
let's ask the question then, Mikey. So, Jonathan, obviously the lugs do have some effect on the way the watch wears. Have you put a piece like this on your wrist, and how do those lugs differ from something that you would get in probably your more traditional dress watch?
The effect is quite stunning, and you have to understand the designer a little bit. You know, we're talking about Sven Andersen. In my opinion, Benjamin Chi, who designed this particular watch, comes a little bit short in that discussion. Benjamin Chi is a collector and a designer. He's located in Singapore, and he commissioned Sven Andersen with this particular watch. And this is totally his design. You see those flat crowns, and you see those crazy lugs. You have to know that this watch is only 37 millimeters in diameter, 37.3. And my largest concern was that it would be too small. But the lugs help tremendously that this watch is fitting very well to smaller wrists and also to larger wrists. It's a true miracle. But I can tell you, if you have the privilege to try this particular watch out, you will see that it fits almost every wrist.
Well, now I understand the lug piece, because if you look at it from this point of view, right, like I don't see much difference in how that would be different than potentially a Calatrava or what have you, but obviously the side angle shows the complete difference, and you can see how the lugs kind of go, they shape down.
It's very interesting how they integrate the lugs.
Yeah, no, that's actually very cool. It's funny how Curly just went straight to the strap, and the complexity of the watch is just so much like more than just that. Like
everybody's just moaning about the straps.
Where do you want to go next, John? So we talked about the lugs, we talked about the dial. Where do you want to go next?
So I was talking about why I wanted this watch. Then of course you get a world timer with a cloisonné dial. And to my knowledge, at the moment, the only other manufacturer who does a world timer with a cloisonné dial is Patek Philippe. And of course, a comparison then comes up. And I will have the shootout of the world timers together with Jamie Opulence and his Patek Philippe as soon as my watch is ready. So we're going to compare live one-on-one our two watches, and we will rave about them, and we will rip the other watch in pieces.
So Jamie's very proud. He's very proud of his piece. I think he has the 5231, if I'm not mistaken. Has a similar hands to the 5130. When we were watching the auction, the Phillips auction, when OC had it up, Jamie was obviously shitting on all the regular pleb 5130s, and he was very proud of his cloisonné dial.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
I was going to ask about the cities, because the city choice here is unique compared to what you see on most modern.
It is unique, but Tanzil, you have to keep in mind there is not only one choice of cities on Patek Philippe. There is an entire universe of collectors who collect certain city rings on Patek Philippe world timers.
Absolutely.
So there is no constant, even with modern pieces. They sometimes
I
change.
didn't know that.
And this is why, Mike, when I first started the talk about world times, I pulled up a very vintage Patek Philippe to show how in time, certain cities may have been major, at that point in time, but maybe not so much. And I use Montreal as an example. It is a large city here in Canada. Maybe in the 1920s and 1930s, Canada might have had a more prominent position on the world stage, but today you don't see Montreal on any of these, You see New York, which is the Eastern time zone, as the major city. So yeah, absolutely. To me, it's super interesting. Like, Jonathan, like, there's a lot of special edition Patek Philippe's that do world times. Like, there's the Mecca dial for the Middle East, which is a platinum world
Yeah.
time. Yeah, because Muslims can't wear gold, so Patek Philippe made it in platinum. There's a Jerusalem dial for that time zone as well. I think it's only limited to like 5 pieces. They asked
Wow.
Thierry Stern like 100 times to make that before he finally made that piece. So Jonathan's absolutely right. You will find, and I always troll Archie because there are some modern world times that have Brisbane on the dial, and Archie will hate on some of them because they don't have Brisbane. But I'm like, well, no, they do. There are some of them that have Brisbane. We do have a super chat real quick before we get back to Jonathan.
Yeah. Hey, I'll be
Curly's-
right back in 5 seconds. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Curly's Fat Gut, $2.99 Australian. The strap should be beef jerky in case I get hangry. I do a very poor Chicago accent. If the real Curly is around, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to read it with a proper.
No, but
Chicago
please
accent.
don't let him on because he will shit on my strap for 2 hours, and
It's
I will
okay,
not
John.
get a word.
I'm applying for the job of replacing Swiss right now as the co-host because Swiss is missing in action.
Yes.
So I think I can give a little bit more context than our friend Curly.
Yeah, and the reason the rumors that I had a fallout with Swiss or that he's totally upset with me are totally untrue. I don't know what he's doing, but we didn't
Look,
we
hey,
didn't
Swiss,
have any problems.
if Swiss is around or Swiss is watching, we'd love to have him on the show. He's a great panelist, great watch knowledge. Obviously, he's been to a lot of or some events with you, and has great perspective on again the topic today, guys. For those that are joining, we love hype baby and hype freak and all the hype talk, but I wanted to reserve some watch talk before we got into the main show tonight to really go in, and Jonathan was obviously very gracious to hop on and share a bit of deep dive into his world time. So we were talking about cities, Jonathan. You said you can get a bunch of different cities. Were you able to choose these cities yourself? Was that custom?
Yes, absolutely. If to give some context, and I'm known for giving long replies to short questions. So when I was sure I wanted to get this particular watch, I reached out to Benjamin Chi, and Benjamin Chi was on the phone with me, and that was 1 year ago, where we all not have been really able to travel, and he told me he started this watch when COVID was at its peak. So we were all stuck at home, and he said to himself, wouldn't it be good to have a dial with a world map where you can travel in your mind over and visit in your mind the places that you've visited or that you want to visit. And that clicked with me. Because
just real quick, Jonathan, just to interrupt, because I know that I do appreciate the long-winded response, and I do want the long-winded response. Lightball, £1.79. Thank you again, Lightball, for super chatting. I will pay £10 if General Saad jumps on the panel. Saad, and Saad says he can't join; he'll join next time. I know that Saad loves to have some watch talk with Jonathan, so we'll hope
Saad
to see
is
Saad next time.
Yeah.
All right, so you're. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
And no, make no mistake, I enjoy talking to Curly as well. So yes, so we clicked, and he told. So I asked him, so which dial do you still have available? Because he made a limited edition of seven different dials, 7 in different tones, and I asked him, which dial do you have left? And he told me, basically you can choose whatever you want. Why don't we make a custom-made dial for you? So you tell me what you want, and I'm gonna make sure that that you get what you want. And of course, after he told me that, I asked, so can I change the cities? And he said, yeah, of course.
That's what I'd be asking. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, but the process, the first process was changing the dial, and then we were talking about the cities.
Just real quick, I'm gonna show. I want to share my tab in a second, and I'll put yours back up in a second here. So this is the Patek Philippe World Time that has Brisbane on the dial, so Archie can stop complaining and stop crying that Can't get a world time because Brisbane's not on the dial. It actually exists. So now I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna. If you want to share your screen again, I will. I'll pull it up, and then we'll. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. It's there.
All right, let's go. Now here's the original concept. Okay, now we're getting interesting.
So that is the second or third draft. So the first difficulties that you're facing is there is a tool called GMT time calculator. You can Google that, and you can find every time in every given city. The problem is that you have daylight saving times. So you must be very careful using that tool because, for example, at the moment, as far as I know, in Australia, they have a daylight saving time.
Yes, and I think that's a limitation of the Paddock Philippe world times. Yeah. Because I know that JLC has world times where they account for, and I believe it's JLC, it could be another brand that accounts for daylight saving. They have a part of the calculation that accounts for daylight savings. But really? on the current Paddock Philippe's, you can't. So you will potentially be out of sync with certain times of the year.
Yeah. And with this particular watch, you're out of sync as well with daylight saving times. But you have to keep that in mind because you want to have the true time in this particular time zone and not make a mistake and use the daylight saving time that was at the moment when you've been researching that, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you better double check. So the process goes, okay, you're hovering over a world map and you choose 24 locations, and then you use that GMT time converter, and then you're faced, oh, there is something wrong sometimes. Then you continue researching those cities. Is there daylight saving time, and so on. Mm-hmm. So it's a complicated process, and it's trial and error.
And Mike, I'm gonna question him on. We're looking right at the first city, and I'm gonna question Jonathan on his choice of Hamburg versus Stuttgart, and his choice of the German city to be the first time zone that I see here. Jonathan, why Hamburg? Why not Stuttgart? Why not Berlin? Why not München? Why not anywhere else?
Because Hamburg is the city where I've been spending most of my life in. I've been a grown up in Stuttgart, but I moved to Hamburg a long time ago, and I'm still here. So I spend most of my time in Hamburg.
Okay, so there is a personal choice, guys, for Hamburg as the city. We got a super chat here from JB. Thank you, JB. 599 euro. Is Mike planning to meet with Saad tomorrow, since Saad will be in San Fran?
Is Saad going to be in San Francisco tomorrow?
I'm not sure. You might want to. Well, here we go from Saad. Hello, Mike the Snake. I have some good news. I'll be coming to San Francisco in a few weeks for some official work. Might stay at your place, possible. There you go.
Oh, absolutely. Or either that, or I'll set you up in a nice motel next
Mike,
to me.
Can he pick up some boxes?
Well, they're still in production, so
okay. Too bad. Too bad for your side.
Okay, I've been trying. Let's go city by city. So Hamburg. Okay. Then we're going to Finland. We got Helsinki.
Yes.
Love to meet Saad though. That'd be exciting.
For sure. We got Helsinki. Just a generic city or a chosen city? You tell us.
Those are our northern neighbors. I had some other choices, but I chose Helsinki. That was just my preference.
And the Finns win. We're in the Eurozone here, guys. We're talking about European countries. The Finns win. Mm-hmm. Now we go into Russia, in the capital of Moscow. Mm-hmm. Choice of Moscow. Obviously, it's standard on most world times. And then we go in.
Then usually they choose something else than Dubai. I forget what they are choosing, but Dubai is an unusual choice. But I've been in Dubai and I just liked it.
Oh, cool.
And then, and I'm sure in Dubai you probably have other choices of cities, like in the Emirates you got Abu Dhabi, you got
Abu Dhabi,
yeah, just to be different. Now, obviously, there's probably space on the dial. He made
exactly. Abu Dhabi is you don't have enough space. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm wondering. And I'm gonna check time zones. Time in Dubai. Time in Dubai, it is 12:39 a.m. Let's see. So obviously you couldn't choose Mecca and Saudi Arabia, which would be 11:39, so it's an hour behind Dubai. Time in Bahrain would also be, so yes, okay, so Dubai is a separate time zone than some of the other
Just let me
countries
check
in the GCC. Yeah,
I think Benjamin Chi is using Muscat, for example.
Muscat, which is in, I believe it's in Oman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, again, it's personal choice.
Yeah.
Just to be different. And I think that, like, whether, and it's also, to me, it would be just the how clean the dial looks. Like, I would agree, like Abu Dhabi, like I probably wouldn't put that there just because it would just look a little strange. From Dubai, we go to the islands just in the Indian Ocean. We go to the Maldives.
The capital of the Maldives is Male, but that looks like male, and I was trying to avoid male, having male on.
Okay. And see, Mikey, this is why it's interesting to ask Jonathan his actual, like, the logic. We're spending a bit of time, but it's cool because
there's a lot of brain grease going into those, I can assure you.
So now I'm going to be a little critical here, Jonathan. So
yes,
I am of Indian descent, and you put Bombay. This is the name of the colonizers used in India for the city of Mumbai. Were you able to change Bombay to Mumbai? Did you choose specifically not to? What was your choice on Bombay here?
I chose Bombay over Mumbai. I know that the correct term is Mumbai. I grew up calling it Bombay. I have this picture, those romanticized, crazy picture of a colony and beautiful buildings and horse carriages and all that crap that doesn't apply.
Okay, so I'm gonna be a little not a bit critical of myself. I used to have a cat and I named the cat Bombay. So
okay.
So no harm, no foul on Bombay.
So it is just my. This is just in my brain. I never got used to Mumbai. So I chose Bombay. But what is interesting probably for the viewers is
Mike,
you can see the dot.
User? Can you verify the user, please?
We got Jamie Opulence.
Just verify before you add him, please.
It looks to be Jamie Opulence. He asked for the link.
It's him. You can add him.
Yeah.
All right,
okay.
Jonathan. We got. Whoop here.
The gracious King, God save our holy King.
Fucking
God
colonizers.
save the King.
Right, I'm gonna mute Jamie here.
How much alcohol is involved?
You're unmuted now, Jamie. You're unmuted. Stop saying God save the Queen, please.
Glorious, God save the King.
All right, welcome Jamie Opulence. He decided to come in to sing the colonizers song. So,
that was awful. My God.
Yeah, that was it was not a good rendition. So okay, so let's go into so you get into Bangkok, which is in Thailand.
No, wait 1 second. You realize the dot for Bombay is very close to the dot from the Maldives.
Maldives, that's correct.
Yeah, and that is because Bombay is sitting on a half time zone. It is not on a full time zone, as far as I researched.
Because I think that in this time zone, I don't know if Maldives and Karachi are in the same time zone, but
I was curious about that.
Because Karachi is usually the city they use.
So Maldives is on the full time zone, but Mumbai or Bombay is on a half time zone, and that is why the dot is moved to the left.
Okay, interesting. I noticed that.
Yeah. So then we're getting a little bit east into Asia now, into Bangkok, which is in Thailand. Bangers. Obviously, we have to have bangers on the show. From Bangers, you go to Hong Kong. You chose Hong Kong as a city. What were your choices in more towards the far east of Asia now?
So Hong Kong is very obvious for me because Hong Kong is my second home. I'm spending a lot of time there, so Hong Kong is a must. I had some other choices, but Hong Kong is quite common. I think Beijing is also on the same time zone, but I wanted to Hong Kong.
You want Hong Kong? Okay.
Next city.
Oh, this is now we're getting interesting here. Next city, go for it.
Yeah, next city is Darwin, which is also on half of a time zone. So that is why the dot is moving again.
Now, did you choose that because GMT is like maybe half size, pint size? Is that why you chose it, or was it just
the city of Darwin was chosen in honor of Mr. GMT? Unfortunately, during that process of that world timer, because we're working now for 1 year, Mr. GMT and we had a silly disagreement over a silly topic, and Mr. GMT ended his friendship with me.
The only time I knew you two from Perth Luxury's channel. I used to watch it, every once in a while. He would stream kind of in my morning time, which I think was evening time in Australia. So that's when I first encountered the interactions between you and GMT. I always thought you guys were friends and cool, and then I remember seeing the dungeon thing about like some kind of, and it just seemed like a miscommunication. But yeah, no, I mean, you obviously putting this on this dial on the city track is is very special and very interesting.
Yeah, it was special, but when he ended our friendship, my first call was to the company, can you remove Darwin? And he told me, yes, if you want the watch in 2024, we can do that.
Yeah, well, obviously you don't want to be waiting if that's
the problem is the supply chain for everybody, so it's quite difficult. But then finally I could remove Darwin because the dial printer screwed this ring up. So now Darwin is being replaced by Tokyo.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So then we go into Sydney. Sydney is a pretty common one.
Yes.
Under Sydney, I can't really read the city.
Noumea.
Talk to us about Noumea.
Noumea is as far as I know, a very exotic island in the Pacific. That is the standard choice, so that is not something very very special.
Very briefly here from Chris is asking, what's the topic for Archie's flagship show today? So we're going to be talking about rebuilding the Archie 5. The Archie 5 was a collection that was very famous on the show, which included the Reverso, 2 Patek's. One of them was a 5107 and the 5035 annual calendar, the Brigade Type 20, and the AP Royal Oak. So we're going to be talking about that topic. Again, not really any hype pieces in there, more high horology, what he felt were heavy hitters at the time, and what he would kind of look towards if he was to use the same collecting style that he used back then to build a collection right now. So that's gonna be the topic for today. We're gonna get back now to Jonathan, who's gonna talk to us about cities. So we went from Noumea. Now we're going to New Zealand and
Wellington. Just coming back to Darwin, Mr. GMT and I, we've been spoken about our disagreement. We are very okay in the meantime, so we are both cool. So don't tell any or put any weird stories. We're cool and good again.
Awesome. Okay. And then we go to Wellington, which is in New Zealand, probably a standard city, I would assume. And you do see Auckland. No. You do see Auckland.
Auckland is the standard city of choice. I've been to New Zealand a couple of times. I always enjoyed Wellington more than Auckland, so that is why I picked Wellington.
Okay. Midway Point is normal. That's standard. Then we're getting into Bora Bora, another island. Did you have any other choices besides Bora Bora? Was there
plenty, but Bora Bora was a must. Bora Bora was a must on the city ring and also on the map that you're gonna see later, because Bora Bora is incorporated there. So Bora Bora is, in my opinion, the most beautiful place on this planet, and keeping that concept in mind that you hover over your watch, you travel in your mind to the most beautiful places that you can imagine or that you've been. Bora Bora was one of the fixed points. Bora Bora had to be on this ring and on the map.
So historically, in the next time zone on the Patek, it's at Klondike. Interesting enough to call it Klondike, which is Alaska. Yeah. And Alaska is listed here. Did you have any other choices besides Alaska? I don't know if there's another time zone besides Alaska.
Not really. There are not really very fancy places that could replace
Okay, and now you
Yeah.
got to lie a bit here, Jonathan, because
No.
I think you're going to say that you put San Francisco on in honor of the hunting
Mike
cat
the Snake.
himself. So, talk to us about San Francisco. You could have picked Los Angeles. You could have picked other
Yeah.
cities in the Western time zone, West Coast time zone. What
You know,
were you
I was thinking about writing Pantera on it, but that idea was scratched. So it's pretty simple. You have the choice between Los Angeles and San Francisco. I've been to both cities. I liked my time in San Francisco much more, so that is why I chose it.
All right, it's a good choice.
But this
And,
is all personal. I'm not going to argue with anybody from Los Angeles, which is the prettier city. It is just, this is my watch. This is my preference. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the important piece is,
Mhm.
you know, is it, is it, what is it in terms of why is this special for you? Why is it special for, the cities? Jimmy's saying wasn't Klondike in the Yukon? I believe it is. So it may be a different time zone than Alaska. And again, right, like these time zones are also certain time zones that are specially set in here that you see like half time zones like Bombay, whereas he could have maybe used Karachi and the Maldives time zone. Looking at past San Francisco, we're going into Colorado. So you've picked
Mhm.
Aspen, Colorado, as opposed to
Yeah.
Denver, Colorado. Why Aspen?
We've been to Aspen a couple of times. We married in Aspen, so Aspen had to be there.
Ah, okay.
Are you avid skiers? Like, is that why you chose Aspen?
Not avid skiers, but we like the place, and we've been there a couple of times. So we then said, why not marry in Aspen? That's what we did.
So now
Wow.
we're going into further into the continent. We got Mexico, which I'm assuming is Mexico City, maybe not the country of Mexico. Any other choices of time zones for Mexico that you could have picked?
Was not really. There was no other choice that really convinced me.
All right, and then
I don't remember the alternatives at the moment.
Eastern time zone. This is my time zone. You chose not Montreal. Hopefully Montreal was a choice. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. I'm not from Montreal. Toronto would be probably a bigger city in Canada to choose. What were your choices on the Eastern time? Was it just New York? I'm sure there's a lot of them on the East side. Miami is a big one on the East Coast.
Yeah, but in my opinion, New York is a must. You will have difficulties to find a world timer that doesn't incorporate New York.
Yeah, even on the Paddock World Timer, it has New York above Montreal. It kind of showed both cities, which I found interesting, and that's why I was kind of talking about it. At a different time, maybe in the 1920s, the prominence of certain countries on the world stage probably influenced Paddock Philippe to put that on the World Timer, putting basically two cities into that time zone to say, hey, maybe there was a larger Canadian market at the time, and therefore they probably wanted to appeal to the Canadian consumer by putting Montreal. Obviously, Canada's a lot smaller of a market now, and the United States is a huge market. So now it's just gone to New York itself.
Yeah, Tanzil, you have to keep in mind that vintage Patek had more than 24 cities on that ring because it had that third chapter. So they incorporated more cities, which made it less readable than the current ones.
And I think that's an important point to bring up because even Archie said, well, it doesn't have Brisbane on the dot, so I don't care. Right. But if it does have something special, like Mike, if you're seeing this and you see San Francisco here, that's special to you because you live in that city. And other people that may live in a city that they may not traditionally see and think it's cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, there was the Middle East countries that specifically wanted either Mecca or wanted Jerusalem, being incorporated in the world time, which was special to them. I think that's an important part of the world time itself is, people choosing something that's special. And that's why I went down this road with Jonathan to talk about the cities because I wanted to hear his thought process because we're learning a bit about it. I didn't know that Jonathan obviously was married in Aspen. I don't think anybody knew about that potentially in the Archieverse. Why obviously he picked Darwin, we knew. All right, we got a special guest here, the Rodent 3.0. I don't know, Jonathan, have you ever met my my old partner in crime, Jin, and I used to live stream on the Archieluxury channel. Jin Tingler, welcome to the stream.
I think we haven't met. Hello, good to see you.
Yeah. Hey guys, I
Hello.
probably can't stay too long, but yeah, good being here.
Jin, we're talking about world time cities. You can see the screen here. We're almost done, but I'll kind of rewind here for you. Which cities would you replace on this world time? So we started with Hamburg in Germany. Would you replace Hamburg with Berlin? Where would you go?
Well, maybe. I mean, Central Europe is the Central European time zone is so, there's so many good picks. I would honestly, I don't know why Bombay is on there. Is this, when is this from? Like, because they're on a half-hour offset, so it wouldn't make sense for them.
Yeah, so he picked Maldives and then Bombay, and you can see in the separation of the dots that it shows the half hour.
I would get rid of that. I mean, who the hell is, that just makes things more complicated, I think, because then it doesn't fix the minute's hand.
We started a bit of a colonization war with Jamie Opulence when I started critiquing the name Bombay as the colonizer's name, and I was telling John how he should have shown Mumbai. We can go past that. What other cities do you think, because he's got obviously Darwin in Australia here. He's got Aspen instead of Denver, not Denmark. What other cities would you have chosen to replace here? Because he was allowed to customize a lot of this. So if you were to customize your own world timer, what cities would you have chosen that would be different?
This is kind of fun, isn't it? I would replace Mexico with Chicago, obviously. I would replace Helsinki with Bucharest. I think they're
why Bucharest? Why Bucharest? Now he picked Helsinki because he had an affinity for Finnish people or Finland itself. Why Bucharest?
I don't know, something more. Does it make sense that it feels more I feel that it's more representative of that time zone because it's connected to more of Europe.
And do you have like a specific connection to Romania? Is it why you like Romania more than just you don't have an affinity for Finland? You travel a lot, so that's why I'm asking. That's why you're a good person to talk about this topic.
I like Finland. No, I probably have more personal connection to Finland, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel. I mean, Hamburg, obviously, I would replace that with. Obviously, it would have to be Geneva, or for myself, Glasuta.
So, Jonathan, to bring it full circle, so he picked Hamburg because he was saying that he spent a lot of his life in Hamburg. Jonathan wrote at number 3, aka Jin, has been to Glashütte, I believe we're pronouncing it properly. He's been actually to the town. He visited on his trip to Germany. He visited on a Sunday. Ironically, he drove in. Jin, tell us a bit about the driving into Glashütte, a bit of like the peril that went into getting into the place and how like kind of dead it was on a Sunday.
Well, so I went in, it was a Sunday, and you can get there from Berlin or from Prague. It's about equal distance. So I drove up from Prague. It's a couple hours, I think. The roads in Saxony are not so great, like in the back roads. They're like super narrow. There's no such thing as really passing. You just have to kind of stop and let the other person go. At some points, you're like driving through someone's garden pretty much. Like literally, could be like someone's garden retaining wall, and then some other person's garden on the other side. And then when you get there, the only thing that was open was all the employees are obviously not there. The museum's open with like one guy working there. There's a kebab shop, which was open.
Of course, there's going to be a kebab shop. I went to a kebab shop in Chamonix. Couldn't even believe there's a kebab shop out in the middle of nowhere. Like,
yeah, you can definitely find them everywhere. And then there was a Nomos shop as well, which was open. So I went in because I was like, okay, well, I've seen the museum, nothing else to do. Might as well look, maybe I'll buy a souvenir. But there was this Chinese guy in there taking up the shop attendant's time, so they just ignored me. which is fine. But yeah, it was cool. Like the museum is awesome, and you see all the brands. They're like when you think of like a company town, or like all these brands are a stone's throw from each other. They really are. Like you can just and they have all their logos on the buildings, and you just see them all.
So Higgins, Saad says you should make a kebab location world time. That would be a good idea, actually. So Jin has a big affinity for Glashütte. To Jonathan, once he went to Glashütte, he came back, and Jin owns a Glashütte Original piece. He loves, I'm not going to speak for him, but I think he loves Lange as well. He likes a lot of the he likes watches from that region. Jin, when you went to Glashütte, did that change your perception of the watches? I know you did visit some museums over there. I know that when I, for example, went to the museum for Patek in Geneva, that definitely changed. I was more of an AP guy before I went there. Did it change your perception of German watches?
No, in the sense that I knew I already had interest, which is why I drove out there in the first place, kind of while I was somewhat in the area. I guess, it kind of maybe cemented the kind of heritage, especially seeing, or my perception of the heritage, just seeing all of the different historical pieces in the museum, like the early 20th century and like 19th century stuff, through to the East German era, through to post-unification, seeing the kinds of changes and also the common characteristics was interesting, because they all obviously have a very unique kind of design language that is different even from other sort of German watches. And so yeah, it was fun.
I'll let you. I know you're probably eating in the lounge, so I'll let you listen to the stream if you want. You can hop in whenever you like. Jonathan, if you ever hear the term Phoenix brand used around YouTube, it was actually invented by the Rodin 3.0 Gen.
I'm not going to go into that.
We're not going to go into the
tonight.
topic. Yeah, we're not going to go into the topic of Phoenix brand. But if you ever hear the words Phoenix brand, Jin actually made that up with me and Archieluxury on a live stream, probably back in like 2017, 2018. So the perpetuation of that term. Yeah, it was originated.
You think that I'm getting triggered by the word?
We're not going to get into. I know that we're not going to get into that. We want to get back to the world time. I know, John. Let me know when you want me to share the screen here. That you
yes, please. Feel free to.
All right,
share
let's go into the actual.
Oh wow! Look at that. That's beautiful.
So that is what came back from the printer. Then you saw the draft, and this is what came back. And so maybe we finish the we finish the cities.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever wherever you want to take it now.
So
Gentlemen,
New York.
I hate to interrupt. I've got to go.
No problem, Hunting Cat. No problem.
I care for my mother, and I've got to go care for her before Archie show, and so I'm gonna step away. So
no problem, Mike.
Thanks
for
having
taking
me on.
care of you, man.
And yes, it was my honor and a pleasure to hear the your mindset in your choices of cities and things like that. It's very personal dial there. Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
So so let's move on. So we're at New York. You picked Bermudas. So in plural. I'm assuming that refers to the islands that are in the country of Bermuda, as opposed to just Bermuda itself.
Exactly. So I think the correct term even for the islands in plural is Bermuda, but in my mind it's the Bermuda Islands. So I made it in plural.
Okay, so hey, that's interesting, right? It's something you won't see because you'll see a typo here. The Jonathan typo, the German precision with the Jonathan typo.
No, look, it's always the question what triggers your mind, and if there would be Bermuda, I would associate it with one island, and I know that Bermudas are a couple of islands, so I chose the plural.
Yeah, look, that makes absolute sense. Moving from the Bermudas or Bermuda, so you've
Now
chosen. Yeah, this
the
was a big
big
one
country.
here because this is a choice because you had to go with Rio de Janeiro. Other cities that you could have chosen the same time zone would have been São Paulo. I think that your choice of Rio as opposed to São Paulo. Talk to us about that choice.
Well, to me, when I was very young, one of my first long trips was to New York. And very soon after, I was fortunate enough to travel to Tokyo. And I always had the song New York, Rio, Tokyo. And I thought I must make it to Rio one day. It's still on my bucket list. Never been to Rio. But to me, Rio is a place to go. I want to travel there. So, yeah.
You're getting a bit of trolling here with my world time says Denver's, and I love it. There you go. Thank you, Mark the Shark. From Rio, S. Georgia.
Yeah. The problem was with Rio de Janeiro, to spell it out, we didn't have enough space. So I had to make a choice. There are a couple of Patek world timers where Rio is just spelled Rio. But those are only 2 letters, and it looks a little bit lonely. And we were discussing that up and down, and Sirocco is criticizing me heavily for doing what I did, because he would have preferred Rio, the 3 letters. But I still stand with it. I think it gives some visual harmony.
Yeah, I don't think it's off. I think you're fine. I think if it was just Rio, yeah, it would look a little strange. But yeah, no, Rio's a good choice. Great city.
But the new Chopard world timer spells Rio de Janeiro exactly like I did, and I haven't seen this particular world timer, so I'm in good company.
Yeah, I have no beef with Chopard, so if Chopard can do it, it's okay. We got S. Georgia. I'm not really familiar with this town. South Georgia, like what is this time zone?
There are not many alternatives, so
Yeah.
you're getting on thin ice on the last two time zones. So the Azores.
These are common. These are common. I see these on world timers. So quite common. So now we've come.
I played it safe. Yeah.
We've come full circle to GMT, UTC, and back to Hamburg.
Yeah.
Obviously, thank you for sharing. I think a lot of folks have, gotten a bit of intimacy, understanding on, your specific choices around the cities, which is, pretty important. Like I said, people think it's trivial, but a lot of people that buy world times, I mean, they will seek out, like you said, specific cities. Either because they want to collect it or they have a certain affinity for the city. Where do you want to go next from the cities?
Yeah, so that is a city ring that arrived probably 2.5 months ago. After they told me you have to keep Darwin or you wait another year. But then this city ring came, and maybe you have a look at New York and you can see something missing.
NATO just says real quick, Timbuktu would have been a good conversation starter.
Probably, yes.
What's missing here? What are we missing?
Have a look at New York.
All right, so you have there's no, oh my God, New York?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Jonathan, showing this, everybody's gonna there's gonna be New York trolls coming out.
No, that was not the purpose. The doll maker screwed it up. So I received a call from Sven Andersen, and he said, quick, you can remove now Darwin, but you have to confirm it today. Make me a drawing. Tell me exactly what I have to do. Don't comment on New York, and so we can remove Darwin. And that is what they did. So because of that missing N, this city ring had to be done again, and that was my chance to get rid of Darwin.
So I thought you and GMT made up. I thought Darwin.
Yeah, but that was 2.5 months ago, and 2.5 months ago we were not friends.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Because I thought Darwin would have been cool on the piece, like you said.
I think so too.
Do you get to keep this? Do you get to keep this ring?
I don't know if they have to return it to the dial maker, because apparently the dial maker pays for the next one. I won't get it. Otherwise, I hope that I'm getting it. Yeah.
Dodger. Tim will be upset with New York. I think JJ would be too. I think a lot of our New York friends would.
I'm waiting for the next troll on the Tim Bright show.
No, hey, this is great. This is great troll material. I think the trolls
Absolutely.
are getting and enjoying the material. Where do you want to go after the cities? Because we've talked about the lugs, we've talked about the dial.
Let's go about. Should we talk about the dial?
Yeah, I think you gave us a bit of a brief description on it earlier. If you want to go back in, you can pull this off if you want, and then you can get into the dial, because we talked about the lugs, we talked about the cities, which I was very interested in. We got a bit into the dial in terms of talking about cloisonné and the gold work that was involved in it. Why don't you direct us into the dial once you're ready to go up for the picture. But it's important, I think, like you said, for world timers. The full picture, the cities are very important. Are you good for me to pull this up?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go.
Okay, here we have the first draft for the dial.
First draft. Okay, so we've got.
So that is a hand-drawn sketch. So my briefing was, can I have a dial that incorporates my most important cities, which is Hamburg, Hong Kong, and Bora Bora, which is not really a city. And he said, yeah, no problem. We're going to do that for you. And that is what you see here. So my idea was to highlight those 3 points of interest, my personal top 3, with a gold dot versus the silver dots for 3, 6, 9, and 12.
Yeah, because I think all of us North Americans are wondering where the center of the universe here is.
Yeah, that is the problem. You have to take a pick, and if you want to have a full world map, you can get that. But that elaborate cloisonné work is best when those borderlines are very detailed. So the smaller scale you choose, the more simplified your cloisonné work is done. So I would have loved to have everything, but my main priority was to have those 3 places on the dial and dream about it. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm anti-US, quite the contrary.
No, I mean, look, everybody would have their own view of it, right? Like whether it's myself in Canada or other people in Europe, people maybe in Africa, people in Australia. I think that's the personal piece of it that is important to the buyer, is important to anybody who's commissioning a piece, for it to be very special, very bespoke to the individual, because again, right, you're buying the same Rolex that everybody else has, may not be as special, and I know that's not going to be a popular opinion as we get more North Americans joining the show and beating me up for not talking about hype baby. But this is now it makes absolute sense on what you were looking for. So this was a sketch.
Yeah.
Do you have anything further past the sketch so far?
Of course I have.
Let's get into the drawing and past the drawing.
So
Full Milk says the dial predicting Antarctica has melted. All right.
So
You're up.
So here you can see the dial in its final stage with the 3 gold dots. It's difficult to see. The picture has been done by Swiss, so I blame Swiss for the bad quality.
Okay.
But you can see the 3 dots or 2 dots, one at Hamburg, one at the corner where the 22 number is.
Yep.
And the third one is just covered with by the hour hand, but it's there.
Yep.
And that is the final version of the dial.
Beautiful. Have you seen it in person? They're just sending you pictures.
No. We've been there. We've seen it in person. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What was your first reaction when you saw it in person?
I was in tears.
So you're blown away. You obviously, and this is why I think earlier, for those that didn't join the stream, and how you showed how much work and effort goes into this style, and not only incorporating how special it is to you, just the feeling of seeing something like that in its perfection. When you hear somebody, and this is going to be, maybe a stinging comment. When you hear somebody call this a shitter, when you hear someone, really degrading a piece like this that you've put a lot of effort and thought into, does it bother you? Does it roll off your shoulders? How do you take comments like that about watches?
Look, it's really not really important to me. It just shows a lack of knowledge, probably how deep the process of creating such a timepiece sometimes can be. So
we got some questions coming. We got a super chat here from our friend Curly Q, the master of the dungeon. $10 US. Thank God there is some quality live streaming talk going on in the Archieverse. Thank you, boys. Thank you, Curly. We got Whole Milk asking me, Tan, would you ever do something like this, or would you continue to only go after the big brands? That's a good question, because it's going to turn the question back on me. Look, I think that this is hold on.
Don't leave me alone here, Tan. The audio cut out. I think that is a very interesting question that Tan asked. The problem is if you get the privilege on getting on an order list for a Patek Cloisonné world timer, first of all, you're waiting forever because they are only getting small numbers. Secondly, try to approach Patek Philippe and tell them, okay, I want to replace Denver with Aspen, and see how that goes. Patek Philippe will.
Can you hear me again, John?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's a little bit fancy.
Yeah, I think it was echoing there because I might have had the stream going. Yeah, so like I'm just using the audio. My
No
AirPods cut out. So yeah, to answer the question, would I do this? I do typically go after. Like, people know that I'm a big Patek Philippe fan, and like you said, right, like going to Patek Philippe to get a personal commission on something like this is very difficult. You need to be a VVIP. So the only method of me being able to do this would be to go to a brand or a manufacturer that would allow me to do this. Would I do this personally? I think that if I was looking for a world timer, like I would be seeking out something personal from a city perspective. I don't think I'd ever get the Montreal or the Canadian City on at least a modern world time from a brand that I'm looking for. So if I were to do that, I would have to probably do this custom. I would look, my personal view on doing something that's bespoke would be to go after a Patek Philippe to do this. I don't think I'll ever be in the position to do that. Personally speaking, it's a project that I don't have a lot of knowledge around to be able, like, look, because here's the thing, Jonathan, right? Like, doing this kind of work, you obviously had to have some intimate knowledge on the dial and understanding the work that we kind of, you've seen all the stuff about the Portnoy conversation. I don't know if you've seen it all over, but people are talking about how like some of those manufacturers might have been taking them for a ride when it came to the cost of the parts and everything else. You'd need to definitely understand and know your shit when it comes to looking at this stuff. And and this is why I've asked you to come on and go through this in depth, because to me this will put me on a path as well to start learning about this in more detail. So to answer a long-winded answer like you do, Jonathan, to a short question, I would never say never. Where I'm at in my journey, I'm really at that point of just looking at big brands, but I'm now going down that journey of looking at and understanding, because I know you're very big into the GPHG, the watches that are very unique and award-winning, that are different from the mold, and this kind of goes around that path as well. So it's putting me down the path. So long-winded answer, this would put me down that path. I would like to at some point in my life do something like this, and that's why I can appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that is totally fine. And, for many people, this is a pure waste of money, because people are telling me you will never be able to sell this watch again. Well, that is not my point. To sum it up, this particular watch is a watch in platinum, which is custom made and is half of the price of a Patek Philippe if you buy it gray market in white gold. That is basically what sums it up.
Yeah, and like that is also an important piece, because everyone is like, well, because you spent a pretty, I think Archie was asking, it was something like 50,000. I don't know if you want to share that, but it wasn't cheap to get this done.
No.
Mm-hmm. Can you maybe give us some detail around your thought process? Because look, we talk a lot about opportunity cost, right? You have 50,000 that you could have spent on a Lange, that you could have spent on a Patek. Why go down this route?
Because I have a Lange. I don't want a Patek. No, but the price was like 50,000 plus tax. Yes. In the meantime, it's 58 plus tax. Patek Philippe Cloisonné will set me back with around 100 if I'm buying it on a secondary market. And in my opinion, here I get a better watch because the Cloisonné is finer made compared to the Patek Philippe. It's not as colorful. I could have gotten that, but I didn't want it. So in my opinion, better Cloisonné, totally customized. I'm getting an Aventurine city ring, which is not offered by Patek Philippe, and we will get hopefully get later to the rotor. I get a custom-made rotor made out of blue gold, which is also very special.
Can you describe the rotor? So blue gold, not necessarily something that is commonly known. Everyone knows rose gold, white gold, platinum rotors. Talk to us about blue gold. What's the? I don't know if you have a picture of the rotor.
I have.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to go down. And hopefully my audio is not too bad. I'm using my speakers.
Can you pull your audio a little bit up?
Yeah,
very.
Let me just do that here.
Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, now it's better.
Now it's better. Is that
okay?
Too loud?
Maybe. No, it's okay.
Okay.
So maybe you can pull the standard version of the back of the Celestial Voyager.
There we go.
So there you go. That is the standard version of this particular watch, and it also has the blue gold rotor with a guilloche pattern, which is a little bit circular, like clouds or anything like that. So Sven Andersen is having a blue gold rotor. What they do is they alloy 21 karat of fine gold and mix it with a high amount of iron. And that amount of iron that is in that alloy, it turns blue when you heat it up. But you have to be very careful, because if you heat it up even more, it turns purple and then gray.
So that's similar to the screws, right? Where when you heat up screws, you get the blue screws and then even the purple screws. And I guess because at a certain temperature, because with screws, for example, if you lose a blued screw, often replacing it's difficult because all the screws were generally at the same temperature and will get the same hue of blue. So I would assume that every blue gold rotor would be somewhat different in every different piece, right?
Exactly. And I had the choice of 4 different rotors, and I could take my pick. Before I'm going to my rotor, just let me explain. You see that little half circle, which is not the rotor, which surrounds that bearing. You can imagine that this smaller part, that small part of gold, heats up quicker than the big part of the rotor. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So you must be very careful to not to turn this particular part into purple.
Is there a high rate of failure on this?
Yes, I've seen rotors just like that at Sven Andersen that were just for the trash.
Well, look, it's also justified. Because I think a lot of people are looking at it like, he spent all this money, right? Why would he spend this kind of money on something that doesn't have so and so brand on it. You know, and I think a lot of people don't understand the rate of failure and the amount of man hours that's going to be required to get this to the perfection that you're looking for and the aesthetic that you're looking for, whether it's on the dial or on the rotor, you know, or even on the finishing of the product. So,
Yeah.
you know, please go into more detail on the rotor, because this is super interesting. I want to go into the design of the guilloche, because I know that you have some experience with guilloche, so I'm interested to know how difficult this is.
It is bloody difficult, I can tell you, because the most difficult part to me was to find the starting and the end point, because you're looking basically through a microscope and you have to coordinate your hands that you can't see. So you have to adjust the motion of your hands with what you see through a microscope, which is really hard. And then one minor flaw, one little mistake, and then you start all over again.
When you did this, when you had your experience at
Yeah.
potentially trying to get a job as a guilloche artist, I watched that stream and I was like, you know what I immediately did is I immediately watched guilloche videos just to
Okay.
see, like, is Jonathan just like, is he lying? Like, is it really that hard? Like, obviously it's going to be hard. It's an artisan craft, but
so difficult.
I was so curious to see how difficult it was, and yeah, no, it doesn't look easy, that's for sure. And
You know,
and you're working with a very soft metal too. You're working with gold.
And you can't do any mistake. And even if you push a little bit too hard your tool into the metal, you see it immediately.
And
so
can
it's not only
can it be rectified? So let's say you messed up and you're carving into, exactly, you're carving into gold.
Yeah.
The only way to rectify, because you've taken either metal off, is that's going to be very expensive to actually rectify if you were to rectify. So, you know, the amount of hours, if you were to guesstimate, and obviously no one's going to hold you to any of these numbers, if you were to guesstimate the time it takes just to finish the rotor, you know, once it's been blued and it's gotten to the point it wants to be at, or I don't even know if the bluing happens after the fact.
The bluing happens after the guilloche.
Okay, so you're doing the guilloche first on a yellow gold rotor. And I'm assuming it's yellow gold that's on, you know, it's starting as a base of yellow, and then it's not some other color.
It's yellowish.
Yeah, so yellow gold, and then you're working on that. Like, just to guesstimate the time it takes to get to the guilloche pattern that you're looking for.
I think a good guilloche works at least 2 to 3 hours on such a rotor, at least.
And that's ensuring, obviously, no fuck ups, no costly issues. Yeah. Guilloche is done, you know, then we're getting into actually heating up the metal, getting into the hue that you want. Quality control.
If you mess up the color, the guilloche starts all over again.
Well, that was the question I had, was the color quality control, right? Like, in the process of all this being manufactured, you know, how interactive are they with the buyer? Like, are they showing you kind of pieces of the project and its finish, or are you letting the artisans make the watch and then present it to you as a full piece at the end?
Oh, that is a good and difficult question, because maybe you get the feeling that, of course, I'm full of ideas and I want to make sure that nobody screws things up and that no mistakes happen. On the other hand, I have great respect for the artisans. I never pushed them to a certain timeline. I never complained when something was going wrong and had to be done all over again. I never pushed them. I gave them the ideas. They came up with a finished product, and I said I like it, unless it was totally defective, but they knew it. So in my opinion, the most important thing is the artisans must get a feeling that you have great respect for their work. The worst thing could be if you come over like a smart ass, know everything better, and dominate an artisan and tell him what to do.
And I think that's important, because as you're asking for bespoke pieces, whether that's a bespoke suit, you're commissioning artwork, or any kind of a commission that you're looking to do, I think part of it is the trust that you put in the artisan to come up with, you know, a product or an art piece that is your vision, which, you know, like you're very intimately involved in here from a vision perspective, but also giving them the liberty to, you know, have their artistic freedom and their, you know, craftsmanship, because that is really what you want to be surprised, right? Because that's why I asked you, I'm like, have you seen the watch? You know, have you seen it in person, and what was the reaction? And we got the reaction earlier, so I don't think you have to go through that again. But just all of that coming together, I think is, you know, people ask a lot of that question around like, well, you know, the question was asked to me, well, are you going to stick to the big brands, or would you do something like this? And this is what will pull somebody into it, is understanding, education around this in the watch collecting sphere. Because, you know, if you don't know, you know, the intimacies around this, like it's very hard for somebody to really get the craftsmanship, the hard work, the, you know, the really the drive that goes into these kind of pieces. We have one super chat before I get your response here, Jonathan, from our friend Lightball, super chatting all afternoon. Thank you again, Lightball. £4.49. Proper watch talk with Tan and Higgins on the AC3 live stream, combined with the addictive drama of the Horology Dungeon, is a perfect offering. Look, Jonathan, you know, in that piece, you know, I know that you had mentioned, you know, you kind of were shying away from joining the Archie stream because you didn't want the association of like, well, you know, I have my own show and I don't want to be an offshoot of the Archieverse, because you're not an offshoot of the Archieverse. I seen you on other shows that weren't even related to Archie. I would say, look, don't feel shy. We you know, Bear, myself, and Bear has a different perspective of collecting than I do. I think you and I probably would mesh a lot better from a conversation perspective on it. But I know Bear appreciates watches and definitely can appreciate craftsmanship like this. AC3 doesn't, you know, he collects, but, you know, he also does appreciate, you know, the high horology. He used to a lot more, the high horology portion of finishing, and the dials and just all of that, the design and artwork that goes into high horology pieces. So I would recommend not being shy to join us on Actual Watch Talk, because, you know, look, there's a lot of fans that really enjoy this. There's a ton of fans that don't, you know, and they have the Horology Dungeon for the drama, and I go there and you go there. We all like to blow off some steam there. But yeah, look, when it comes to Watch Talk, don't be shy, because, you know, I think, you know, I've learned a lot. I've gotten a lot out of the conversation. Hopefully, you know, everybody else has from learning about your piece. And I gave you your time here for, well, you know, Archie might have blocked you, but not on the European show. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think that he really blocked me. So, no, thanks for the kind words. I try to give some input. Truth to be told is, I need someone to bounce off. So my own show works because I'm doing that together with Swiss. I used to bounce off pretty well with Mr. GMT and with Archieluxury. So I'm pretty boring myself, and I don't want to ruin the drama or the entertainment.
Yeah, look, and the entertainment comes from, you know, like you yourself are showing just the issue with the cities where it was New York, right? Like it's just funny, right? Like it's, you know, I think part of it is watch collecting is such a, you know, it can take you down the rabbit hole, and you could be educated for hours on pieces. But, you know, when it comes to watches, they're just watches, and you kind of have to talk about other things. You can't, you know, not everybody can talk about it for hours, and it can't really carry a show for hours, because it's just, you know, people will somehow get bored. And, you know, I would say that the collecting sphere, the people that watch YouTube, you know, a lot of them, everyone's different. Everyone's got a different interest. And, you know, you're going to find your crowd that's going to be supportive of the Swiss and John show, that aren't probably going to be the hype, you know, babies out there that really are interested in,
not.
You know, just
something. And just let me tell you one thing, and I hope that you're gonna repeat it when the moment comes. I'm not here to promote my channel. I never want to hear that, oh, we let you on because you were promoting your channel. I'm not here to promote my channel. It's not monetized. It probably will never be. We don't have any career plans or anything. We just enjoy the watch conversation, and that is why I'm here today.
We got a comment from Bear Clooney Watches. Higgins is truly a great addition to the Archieverse, and his contribution to horology community is significant. Him and I had our differences, but all I have toward him now is respect. And look, I would resonate what Bear is saying. I think, Jonathan, what's important is that we need presenters and panelists like yourself to bring balance, right? Like, I don't know if you saw GMT's collection review yesterday, but prior to the review, I talked to Bear and I talked to GMT and I said, hey, look, I'm going to talk to Archie around not just talking about value retention. I want to talk about balance. I want to talk about uniqueness. I want to talk about value. I want to talk about a lot of things that are important, but bringing balance to collecting is important because you can easily go down. Like if you're a new collector, and look, I've been streaming on this show for, almost 5 years plus, here with Archie, and some of the YouTubers that you see out there today, like they, a lot of them have said, hey, you influenced me 4 years ago when I was just a punter in the chat to buy this watch or to get into this, the high horology or finishing and learning about it. So I think that's what you bring of value is that, what you're interested in goes against the grain in terms of like, I think what the majority of YouTubers are discussing, and I think that is what's important about your channel. So you're not here to spruik it to make money, but I think what's important is for people to understand that, hey, if you're interested in this kind of topic, there are guys, yourself, John, and yourself and Swiss, Bill Sanders, who dives down into these kind of topics, and other folk that are really into finishing and design, and if you look at design, there's a lot of design focused YouTube channels for watches, but I guess my point that my long rant is making is it's a lot more, it's a bigger spectrum. Watch collecting is a huge spectrum. I think everybody really dive into different spectrums of it, because I think that you may find something that you really enjoy and you really like to learn about, over just, hey man, I'm just going to buy something because it's going to go up in value, and you're going to get bored. This is where the drama comes from. We just get bored,
I hope that we achieve two things. Nobody really has to buy those crazy things, but I hope that first of all, it opens some people for a broader understanding how a watch is being made, how it works, and what possibilities are out there. And if one or the other gets some broader interesting in those very complicated decorations or a manufacture process, then it's we don't like to talk about the branding, about value retention, where to buy those things, does it make sense to pay 10,000 over retail, and so on. We are mainly interested in the horology, in the craft, in the people who are working on those pieces for endless hours, and that is what we talk about.
I was going to end this stream in about 30 minutes. I wanted to go into so I don't know if there's any more you wanted to cover on the rotor. I wanted to talk about finishing of the movement, talk about the movement itself, because I think that's a part that we haven't. We're not going to talk about the strap today, Curly. I know you're in the chat. You've done your dive analysis.
Just allow me one word about the rotor. So this is custom made, has never been done by Sven Andersen before. He does his dial with this pattern. He has a jumping hour with this pattern, and it was my request, my idea. Could you make that? They made it the first time. They gave me a choice of 4 different rotors. I chose the brightest one, which I really liked. I can see a question here. Jonathan, just wondering why the guilloche couldn't get done after the bluing. Simple reply to that: the bluing is only on the surface. So if you heat blue the rotor and then put the guilloche in, the guilloche removes material. So then you would see the naked gold after it. So just one one hint how difficult this guilloche is to be made. To be made. I was telling you a little bit about starting and endpoints. You see here endless starting and endpoints where the little tool is removing material. So that is bloody
I believe you
difficult.
fucked up on the endpoint. Was that where you messed up on your part of your
Yes.
Yeah, and you mentioned. So, what is difficult about that? Like, ending. Is it harder at the start point? Is it harder anywhere else, or is it just consistently difficult throughout?
Well, it is consistently difficult. First of all, the microscope is not really three-dimensional. So to put the tool down at the right point is a task for itself. If you put it down at the wrong point, you ruin the rotor or the dial. Then you have to find the right amount of pressure, and then you better end when it must end. And you can see those endpoints here are so perfectly aligned. I could never do that. So every little triangle has 1, 2, 3 stripes that start and end within that triangle. So that those are all starting and end points, because you can't go over, because the next triangle has a different orientation.
Yeah, and this is something you can appreciate even without the loop. I think that's important, especially on the rotor, right? Like, when I have an AP 15500, and and it doesn't have the old design of the rotor that the 15400 or the 300 had, which had the coat of arms of the Audemars Piguet family. It's a skeletonized rotor. So for me, it's, I don't know, I'm a bit torn around the skeletonized rotor, because the AP 4302 movement it's finished okay. It's not to the standard that I would say Paddock would finish or a Vacheron.
It's industrial. It's too
industrial. Yeah, there's some hand finishing, there's machine finishing. And to me, the Royal Oak is not the beauty of the Royal Oak is not in necessarily the finishing of the movement, but it's the finishing of the bracelet, the finishing of the case, which to me, look, I find more value in that because it's something I can see with the naked eye. I don't need to, take it out and put it on a loop. So I can appreciate that. For me, that balance I'm okay with. I would be a little cheesed. Yeah, I prefer paddock finishing, which is just slightly better. It's not insanely better. But yeah, to me, seeing something with the naked eye is very important.
Yeah.
When it comes
with this particular pattern, you have to put the rotor into the machine in 3 different directions. That is how you do the guilloche. The guilloche only on this style, it only works straight. So you have 3 different orientations to get your guilloche. So basically, you're starting with one.
I was going to say, hopefully you have a video of it. So on your channel, maybe you could even show it.
We don't. Unfortunately, I'm trying to get one, because that's going to be really interesting.
Right? It just brings everything into perspective of how difficult it could be to make this guilloche, right? So
I wouldn't want to make this particular thing, to be honest.
We have about 20 minutes left before I end the stream. Do you want to talk about the movement, maybe the finishing of the movement?
Not really. It is a vintage Anton Schild movement that Sven Andersen has a couple of still. All gears are polished by hands. There is some anglage on some top gears, so it is very very nicely finished. It is not super high end anglage, just like we are talking over, but in my opinion, Sven Andersen is doing a very good job. Every little teeth of the gears is being hand polished with a little machine. It's incredible to see. And
so when we talk about finish, we're talking about different types of finish for the viewers that are maybe new to finishing. So anglage, which refers to beveling, can be done by machine. The highest level of anglage is obviously done by hand. You can see that especially where points connect into an intersection point, I would say, and you can see it rounded off, where you'll notice if there's a sharp point or a sharp angle that it wouldn't have necessarily been done by hand. On the beveling, when you're talking about the perlage, so circling, different size of perlage that you can do, whether on the base plate or other parts of the movement. We're talking about the bluing of screws, the mirror polishing of screws, and even beveling around the where the screws insert into the movement. So again, we're not going to dive deep into it because I don't think Jonathan necessarily. We've covered a lot on the watch already.
We'll do that another time.
Yeah, we can do that another time. So Jonathan, we're looking at. Why don't you talk to us what we're looking at, and maybe some final thoughts.
So that picture was taken together with a picture of the rotor. So Swiss and I, we met for the first time in Geneva at the beginning of November, if I remember correctly. We went to Sven Andersen. We chose the rotor. We checked the dial. Swiss and I've been totally blown away by the watch. I've tried the watch before a year ago. Swiss, I think he has seen a completed watch for the first time. I tried it on again. I think it looks absolutely perfect on my wrist in terms of size. No fears that 37 millimeters would be a lady's size. So
do you really need more, right? Like that's a good point, right? Like when you're thinking of a dress watch, and I'm going to pick up a bit on Lange here. On the Lange one specifically, like so the folks of the channel know I've owned a lot of Pateks, 5127, the 5035, which were both 37 millimeter. I own the 5196, which is a 37 millimeter. Just stats itself obviously don't make the difference in terms of the size. The lug to lug is very important. The thickness of the watch can be very important. Do you have any of the stats on the thickness of the piece, lug to lug? Is it large? What would you say? And I don't know, you may not have them, but maybe just give an overall sense of just the fit complete.
Thickness, if I know it correctly, is a little bit over 10 millimeters. The lug to lug, I can't tell you. I just know, and I've been talking about that with Benjamin Chi, the designer, endlessly. He told me that it was very important to him that the watch looked good on all kinds of wrists. So fatter wrists and skinnier wrists, even on ladies' wrists. So he put a lot of thought into that. And I think it just shows. Swiss was trying on this particular watch. He has significantly skinnier wrists than I have. And it looked absolutely fantastic on him as well.
Yeah, and look, a Lange one for me does not. I don't know, when I put it on, the fit of the watch is a bit large.
Really?
It is. It's just a bit large. And I feel that a sweet spot can be between 36 and 39. Obviously, Lange falls within that range, but it does fit a bit big for me. And look, don't get me wrong. I like the finishing. I like the piece itself, but it gets to that point where I'm like, this may be just a little big, for a dress watch, at least. And we can go into the rabbit hole. What's considered a dress watch, or what even is the definition of a dress watch? But when I'm speaking of the Lange one specifically, I don't know what it is. I've tried on a bunch of them, and it's not that they're bad. I'm not saying that they're bad. I just feel that they just fit a bit on the larger side for me. And we have a friend in the chat, fella, who owns a beautiful 5270 perpetual calendar, which is a larger perpetual calendar in platinum with a salmon dial. And he's got a smaller wrist, and that watch just looks absolutely bang on perfect for him.
How does a 3940 look on your wrist?
Usually they're fine. Like, I mean, I wear a the AP Royal Oak's a 41, fitting probably like a 43, but it's a sports watch, right? I think it doesn't look as out of place, but as a dressier piece, when it's a bit larger of a size, it can, and especially the dial is on the Lange one, there's a lot there's stuff going on that dial as well. It just, to me, it looked a bit out of place on my wrist, and that's just my own visual opinion. It may not look any worse than anything else I have, but look, from my perspective, a dress watch, 36 to 39 millimeter, I think is just fine. They're not meant to be show, look at me, look at me, look at me type pieces, like for example, the Royal Oak would be. So I think,
To be honest, I'm very surprised to hear that the normal Lange one is too big, because some people have complained about the 38.5, and that is why the Grand Lange was
created,
done.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Ducky says Lange and other German brands tend to have longer lugs that extend the overall size of the watch presence on the wrist. Maybe that's it. And Saad says 38.5 is an excellent size, especially if you have thin lugs and a thin watch. And yeah, that is actually an interesting piece, because the 5196 is an extremely thin watch. But the lug to lug is almost, I think, something like 47 millimeters. So it fits a lot bigger than, the 37 design. So yeah, look, I think the important part is that, does it fit well on your wrist? Is it something you're happy with? Is it not going to look out of place, on your wrist? Because if that's the case, then, I think you found the perfect watch.
Yeah. Okay. So yes. So I haven't seen my watch ready. I had to try a similar watch. As we speak, the watch is being assembled. I hope that it's ready by next week, and I hope that in the days after I can collect it then in Berlin at the 18th.
You just need to find Swiss to actually do that live stream on your channel. Like, else you're
gonna no. That is Jamie Opulence, where we're doing the live stream of the World Timer shootout.
The shootout. Look, I love Jamie's watch. I think it's a beautiful piece. I know he's very proud of it.
Absolutely.
So if he's watching, Jamie, the shootout's about to happen, hopefully very soon. The closing arguments or closing comments, I would say, in the last 10 minutes that we have here, from my perspective, number one, I guess what we wanted to talk about today was go off the beaten path. Really, you want to search off the beaten path in watch collecting. I think it makes it a lot more fruitful for the collector. If we could just blindly take off brand names for certain pieces or a lot of pieces, I think a lot of people would be surprised at what they like. And, it's just, I think it's an evolution that somebody goes through as a watch collector. They start with Rolex, or they start with even other types of brands, Omega and Tudor, and even other brands that are lower, in tiers that people consider like an Oris or Hamilton. And they really they explore further and further. And there's a lot of people that may just like what they like, and they like Rolex. And Rolex has got a huge catalog of pieces to look through, especially vintage. So I'm not saying if you're a Rolex person that's not good.
Look, Tan, I've been starting with Rolex. I still have Rolex watches. I enjoy Rolex. Doesn't mean that that I have any bad thoughts about Rolex. I just discovered a different niche of watchmaking, which is so much fun and so educating. You always discover something new, and that is just amazing.
Yeah, and like I said, right, you can discover a lot new in Rolex that you may not know. Saad and I we chat almost every day around a new dial he's found on the date, that we didn't know about that existed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we find that very interesting and cool. And a lot of them are very gaudy. Not a lot of people would like them, but we find it interesting. And for us, the hunt is very important. And so that evolution of collecting, come full circle, doesn't necessarily have to be what, Jonathan and I were talking about today. Could be anything. I think it's just expanding your horizons past just thinking about value retention, just thinking about dollars and cents, just thinking about brands, to actually finding something that interests you in horology and actually going down that path and really exploring, educating yourself, going on the hunt. Jonathan, I'll leave you with the final words. You've got a few minutes here, so you can go for a long monologue if you like.
No, I don't think it's necessary.
7 minutes. You got a full 7 minutes, so you could plug and go monologue. Go for it.
No, the monologue will not be very long. So I know that that this watch would be hard if I wanted to sell it. That is not important to me. We had a very interesting conversation, and Voulez-vous made a good point. When somebody was asking for a gift for his wife, and people were saying, "Yeah, this watch has a better value retention. Just imagine you give a watch to your wife or the woman that you love, and you tell her, look, I bought you a very special watch. It has incredible value retention. So what I'm trying to say is there's so much more to discover on watches than value retention, bargains, avoiding scratches or whatever. Just wear those bloody things and enjoy them. And to me, it's all about the question, if I'm wearing this particular watch, does it make me feel great? And if I'm getting a good feeling from a particular watch that I'm wearing, that is what I want. Nothing else matters.
No, it's a very good point. And you get a really good point about the value retention. If I ever give that to my wife, she wouldn't give a shit about that. That's for sure. Even Archie himself, I mean, he's bought pieces for, his significant other that were special to him. That Reverso that he lost was very special. It was the watch he would never sell above all else. He even sold the 5107, which was, a watch that we all know him for. But that Reverso meant a lot to him because it was given to him on his 40th birthday. And it was very special. Here we got a super chat from our friend Lightball, who's been carrying the show today. Lightball, £4.49. Super chat for the Tan, Higgins and Sod stream when you are all next available. Absolutely. I've welcomed Jonathan to join us on the main stream because I do feel that the balance and the breadth of knowledge would be good to bring on top of just Archie's, his usual, which is a very, very deep knowledge on a lot of pieces. I think different perspectives are important. I think that they bring a lot to, the community, to the whether that's YouTube or, forums or just watch collecting in general. I think I value differing opinions. I value people who disagree with me. Jonathan and I disagree. We've disagreed over the chat over a lot of things. But that's fine, right? Everybody's entitled to an opinion, and everybody's opinion should be valued. And I think that that's important. We also believe in bringing good value for money for the people that actually spend money, that want to, and look, no one's going to demean anybody's piece. If you've spent money on a Panda Daytona and you love it, that's great. More power to you. If you've done that on a custom piece like Jonathan has, I really do thank him for, obviously taking the time to dive into that with us, because it was important to him. It was important to me to learn about it, to give perspective, rather than us just blankly calling it a shitter because it wasn't a Patek Philippe or it wasn't a Lange or anything that we thought would be what in our idea is, a piece that we think is worthy of not being called a shitter. We do obviously bring a lot of comedy to it. You guys know I enjoy my trolling. Jonathan enjoys his trolling. We wanted to make sure that, today's stream, for the European crew was watch related. We have a morning show with Archie, which is his evening show for Australia, but morning for us North Americans, where it's a bit of watch talk, a bit of fun. We have our evening show, which is a bit of watch talk, a lot of fun. We have the Horology Dungeon with Nark and Curly and Angelic, which is just mayhem, always fun. But we wanted to bring, when we talk about the Archieverse, it started with watches. We want to end it with watches. We think that, these shows have a very big, the cornerstone is watches. We want to make sure that it's still inclusive of the shows. So Jonathan, honestly, if you're ever free on the time of the main shows, I know it's evening time for you in Europe. Don't feel shy to log on. I am one of the admins that helps Archie do a lot of the production on the show. Bear obviously has welcomed you with open arms. No one's going to say, exactly what you were talking about the offshoot of the show. I know you mentioned you're not monetized. You have no interest in that. You and Swiss definitely take a different perspective on watches. But yeah, no, we want to welcome you, ensure that you do feel welcome. I think a lot of people who've been watching have had a lot of fun. Got another super chat here from Thomas Burnett, a good friend of mine, good friend of the channel. £1.79. Thanks for the early stream, Tan and John. Respect. We wanted to make sure that our European friends and British friends and Irish friends and everybody who's in this time zone.
Can I say one word? Thomas is doing the Escapement show tomorrow, noontime European time. We will talk about black watches, and it would be great if some of the folks would join us.
Yeah, look, Thomas.
The channel is called the Escapement show.
Thomas used to do a show with a good friend of mine, Blue Shirt Buddha, who's unfortunately passed away. Not too long ago. Very unfortunate for the Archieverse. He was a great friend, great panelist, loved the show. And I was the first person to actually get him onto the show. I encouraged him to come on, just like I'm encouraging you, because, as a viewer, not just as a panelist or someone who's part of the show, but, I like listening to this. I don't think that there's a ton of shows around, honestly, Jonathan, that just literally just spend the time and just talk watches. I do recommend everybody subscribe to the Swiss and John show. I have. We got $2 here from Jimmy. Good job, boys. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Curly. I'll give you the last word here, Jonathan, before I wrap.
Wear your bloody watches.
Wear your bloody watches, guys. All right, thank you. We'll be on the live show in 1 hour. I want to give a bit of a break. My AirPods died, unfortunately, in the show. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen, but they did. And then Jonathan's like, don't leave me hanging. Hopefully I won't do that again. Thank you again, guys. I'm going to end the broadcast now, and we'll see you guys in an hour.
Okay. Bye-bye.